the food-based dietary guidelines for Jamaica. These menu items would be easily identified with the Better For You logo, so customers can quickly identify healthier meal options by looking at the menu or menu board. Once they see the Better For You logo, they can confidently order that menu item, knowing that it's a healthier choice. Better For You will help Jamaicans to make better choices and prompt restaurants to add better options to their menu. Better For You is better for everyone. Good health begins with better choices.
Cook it up and make we steam it. Fresh so me need it, tilapia a real fish. Cook it up and make we roast it. Farm fresh so me need it, tilapia a real fish. Grow smart at the best part. Food for thought so me have to eat smart. Easy cash, fully net. A tilapia so you don't know what's next. Cook it up and make we fry it. Fresh so me need it, tilapia a real fish. Bring home the best in freshwater fish. High content of vitamin B3, protein and potassium. Tilapia, simple, healthy, delicious.
We know you want better roads in your towns and communities. That is why through the Spark program, your government is allocating over $40 billion over 2 years to fix your community and rural roads. $20 billion will go towards fixing smaller roads in every area, with $150 million allocated per area. The remaining funds will be distributed based on road length and condition, ensuring areas with greater need receive more assistance. Your government is caring for you.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Most Jamaicans will tell you corruption in politics is deep-rooted, and I just saw it said, and nothing can do about that. But actually, there is, and another 152 countries are doing it. It's called asset declaration, and it works best where citizens themselves understand it and help to ensure the law is enforced. Corruption happens when public officials abuse their power to benefit themselves, family, or associates. Jamaica's Integrity Commission Act was designed to prevent corruption, and here are 5 things you should know. 1. Under this law, every year MPs and senators must report what they earn, own, and owe, and if they don't, they'll be sanctioned. 2. Their report must include the same kind of information for their wife or husband and children. 3. If they get a gift worth more than $100,000 from anyone who's not family, they must declare it. 4. A summary of the declarations of our Prime Minister and opposition leader must be published where the public can read it. 5. Parliamentarians can now be prosecuted by the Integrity Commission. They can be fined up to $2 million or serve up to 2 years in prison if they don't file their declaration or if they give false information, and $500,000 for not filing on time or ignoring requests for information. Unfortunately, our parliamentarians made changes that prevent the public from knowing when they've broken the law or when they're being investigated. We really need to change that. Visit jampja.org to find out more about the Act and to track if your MP is obeying this law. If they're not, JAMP's MP Tracker will help you write, tweet, or call your MP. Ask them, you submit your declaration yet? The Integrity Commission clear you? Let's help the Parliament stay honest. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union and the Inter-American Development Bank in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
I'm not allowed to speak for myself. They make all the decisions.
I'm not allowed to go anywhere by myself. They're afraid I'll escape.
See how my hand and face bruise up? Them beat me cause me say me tired.
I'm only 13, but they said if I work harder, they will allow me to go home.
Me no have no birth paper, no ID. Them take all of my documents, them.
Victims of human trafficking are all around us and they need our help. Forced labor is one of the many forms of human trafficking. If you see something, say something. Report suspected cases of human trafficking. Call the nearest police station, 119 or 888-PROTECT.
Do your part to prevent mosquito breeding. Mosquitoes will breed in any container that holds water.
Tightly cover water storage containers such as drums, barrels, buckets and tanks. If this cannot be done, pour cooking oil on the water surface. Punch holes in all tins, plastics and beverage boxes to prevent the collection of water before disposal. Cover all tires or fill with dirt to prevent water collection. Scrub all vases once per week to remove mosquito eggs. Use mosquito repellents to protect yourself from mosquito bites. Dispose of garbage properly by placing in plastic bags and securing properly to prevent water collection.
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
A new story is being written for all Jamaicans. The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation is on a mission to transform lives. From increasing access to potable water, providing secure homes for the most vulnerable, and helping you own a piece of the rock. We're revitalizing communities and preserving our environment. We're making an impact. See the difference. Feel the difference. Building a better Jamaica for you and me.
You can feel it. Make JC.
Do you remember where you were and what you were doing when Nelson Mandela visited Jamaica in 1991? What a momentous occasion. Well, PBCJ, the People's Station, invites you to join us for the next PBCJ Watch Party, Saturday, June 28, from 6 to 9:30 p.m. at PBCJ, 5 to 9 South Odeon Avenue, Halfway Tree, where we will show Mandela in Jamaica, highlights of the visit by Nelson and Winnie Mandela in 1991. Titus in Town, episodes and scenes of the hilarious drama series starring Glenn Campbell and featuring Clive Uzo Anderson, Rosemary Murray, Owen Blacker Ellis, Winston Bello Bell, and Claudette Pius. And Mirrors in Paradise, snippets of an upcoming local drama series produced by Barry Vision Film Productions for PBCJ, which hits your screens in July. Join us for unbridled laughter and kin-teeting while you watch some amazing local talent. Trust me, it'll go nice, it'll go epic, it'll go sweet. PBCJ Watch Party, Saturday, June 28, and 6 o'clock means 6 o'clock.
Jamaica's economy is in the best shape ever. Everybody abroad and abroad talk about it. Your government is investing in our hospitals, parks, community clinics, roads, and water infrastructure.
I'm Cole Hawker. This is PBCJ, the People's Station.
Remember that big project the government announced them was going to from when? You ever catch yourself a wonder what happened to it? Stop wonder like an outsider and start move like the country belong to you. You have a right to publicly owned information, and the Access to Information Act gives you that power. I know you have enough questions about how government are run or not run, so let me show you how it works. Say mosquito spraying going on in your community, your children asthmatic and you want to know what chemicals are in it. Or what about that Auditor General report on a public official getting twice his salary with no proper approval? Is your taxes and you want to know if they paid it back? First, do some basic searching to see what is already on government websites. If you don't see what you're looking for, make a formal ATI request by completing the application form on the ATI site or sending a letter or email. And remember, you don't have to say why you need it. It is your right to know. Make sure you send your request to the right agency, and once they confirm receipt, they get 30 calendar days to provide the information. A maximum of 60 if extra time is needed. Yes, I know you want access to everything, but sensitive documents are protected from the public for up to 20 years. For example, documents that would expose a citizen's personal privacy, or those dealing with cabinet discussions, the Governor General's office, or information on the investigative activities of the security forces. Any public officer who tries to destroy or hide any official document can be sanctioned. And if you're having difficulties, the ATI unit will help. So, what if the chemicals in the mosquito spray are toxic? What if the agency did not even try to get back the money they paid out? Call or email your MP. Share the concern, because as your elected representative, they can represent your questions to the government ministers in the House. Remember, it is the job of parliamentarians to monitor and hold the government to account on your behalf. Is not every country gives citizens this kind of power, you know? And at 20 years we have this law, and we barely use it. So access information and mind your business, Jamaica. Visit jampja.org today to see what information we access to make it easier for you to hold the government to account. Let's do our job to make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
Do you remember where you were and what you were doing when Nelson Mandela visited Jamaica in 1991? What a momentous occasion! Well, PBCJ, the People's Station, invites you to join us for the next PBCJ Watch Party, Saturday, June 28, from 6 to 9:30 p.m. at PBCJ, 5 to 9 South Odeon Avenue, Halfway Tree, where we will show Mandela in Jamaica, highlights of the visit by Nelson and Winnie Mandela in 1991. Titus in Town, episodes and scenes of the hilarious drama series starring Glenn Campbell and featuring Clive Uzzle Anderson, Rosemary Murray, Owen Blacker Ellis, Winston Bello Bell, and Claudette Pius. And Mirrors in Paradise, snippets of an upcoming local drama series produced by Barry Vision Film Productions for PBCJ, which hits your screens in July. Join us for unbridled laughter and kin-teeting while you watch some amazing local talent. Trust me, it'll go nice, it'll go epic, it'll go sweet. PBCJ Watch Party, Saturday, June 28, and 6 o'clock means 6 o'clock.
Jamaica improve, heart free, wages increase, housing scheme build up, we have more opportunities, roads build, and the dollar stable. We are building Jamaica. Good things are happening in Jamaica. Our unemployment remains the lowest it has ever been, which means more Jamaicans are working and can provide for themselves and their families. Your government is building Jamaica.
Do you remember where you were and what you were doing when Nelson Mandela visited Jamaica in 1991? What a momentous occasion! Well, PBCJ, the People's Station, invites you to join us for the next PBCJ Watch Party, Saturday, June 28, from 6 to 9:30 p.m. at PBCJ, 5 to 9 South Odeon Avenue, Halfway Tree, where we will show Mandela in Jamaica, highlights of the visit by Nelson and Winnie Mandela in 1991. Titus in Town, episodes and scenes of the hilarious drama series starring Glenn Campbell and featuring Clive Uzzle Anderson, Rosemary Murray, Owen Blacker Ellis, Winston Bello Bell, and Claudette Pius. And Mirrors in Paradise, snippets of an upcoming local drama series produced by Barry Vision Film Productions for PBCJ, which hits your screens in July. Join us for unbridled laughter and kin-teeting while you watch some amazing local talent. Trust me, it'll go nice, it'll go epic, it'll go sweet. PBCJ Watch Party, Saturday, June 28, and 6 o'clock means 6 o'clock.
Remember, gambling is just a game. Choose to gamble responsibly. Set a budget, avoid chasing losses, and stop gambling when you reach your money limit. For gambling help, call RISE 888-991-4146. A message from the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Commission.
What is the role of a backbencher in government? I'm glad you asked. They're members of parliament who are not appointed to cabinet. So they sit in the back of the legislature and they apply pressure. They examine what government legislates, participate in parliament debates, raise issues and advocate and question chamber when things don't look straight. Backbenchers represent the constituents in parliament. Backbenchers oversee the interests of citizens, you and me. But how can they be agents of government accountability after them no hold no portfolio? And them and a minister? No. So then how can they facilitate government transparency. And the next thing, them on a front bencher. So how them affect me? You see, a lot of work is in committees. So these portfolio-free MPs with less dire responsibilities are more accessible to you and me. So they help with policy, but it helps if we engage them, you see. So they're not just in the back benches, but on the ground, in the trenches. Though in the back of Parliament, we're at the front of their cause. So pause. Find your backbencher at jampja.org.
Do you remember where you were and what you were doing when Nelson Mandela visited Jamaica in 1991? What a momentous occasion. Well, PBCJ, the People's Station, invites you to join us for the next PBCJ Watch Party, Saturday, June 28, from 6 to 9:30 p.m. at PBCJ, 5 to 9 South Odeon Avenue, Halfway Tree, where we will show Mandela in Jamaica, highlights of the visit by Nelson and Winnie Mandela in 1991. Titus in Town, episodes and scenes of the hilarious drama series starring Glenn Campbell and featuring Clive Uzzle Anderson, Rosemary Murray, Owen Blacker Ellis, Winston Bello Bell, and Claudette Pius. And Mirrors in Paradise, snippets of an upcoming local drama series produced by Barry Vision Film Productions for PBCJ, which hits your screens in July. Join us for unbridled laughter and kin-teeting while you watch some amazing local talent. Trust me, it a go nice, it a go epic, it a go sweet. PBCJ Watch Party, Saturday, June 28, and 6 o'clock means 6 o'clock.
A new story is being written for all Jamaicans. The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation is on a mission to transform lives. From increasing access to potable water, providing secure homes for the most vulnerable, and helping you own a piece of the rock. We're revitalizing communities and preserving our environment. We're making an impact. See the difference. Feel the difference. Building a better Jamaica for you and me.
You can feel it. Make JC. The following is brought to you by MOCA, the major organized crime and anti-corruption agency with kind support of NIA and USAID.
Lock them out. Criminal minds think they are cunning. The major organized crime and anti-corruption agency have them running. Your friend a shout, come scam. Take time running, are we ready for the ops? Drive up on your block, step out now me black cyber take about your laptop. Pull up every lock, no evidence to drop. We put it in a cuffs and now we have the under. Sin you say scam, you better look out fit. When you move corrupt, better look out fit. They say you get wet, look out fit. Look out fit, look out fit. From you say scam, you better look out fit. When you move corrupt, better look out fit. They say you get wet, look out fit. Look out fit, look out fit.
The proceeding was brought to you by MOCA, the major organized crime and anti-corruption agency with the kind support of NIA and USAID.
Apply to the Heart NSTA Trust. Learn a new skill and expand your horizons. Your government has made it completely free to you.
Diabetes is high glucose level in the bloodstream. In Jamaica, we have 236,200 people living with diabetes that are known. It's a chronic illness, therefore it's not curable, sad to say, but it can be controlled through proper monitoring such as dieting, exercise, medication, the checking of the glucose level, and consultation with your physician. It is our duty to give care to patients that are diabetic. Whether you're a member or non-member, you can see our consultations. We have a wide range of services that we offer to patients, such as diet plan, our diabetes education, also to teach patients about diabetes, how to monitor themselves and to manage diabetes, to check their blood glucose level and how to treat themselves. At the DHA, we have our Life for a Child program that's for patients 0 to 25. What we offer to them is free insulin, free Lancet, free blood sugar machine, also education and support group for them. You can call us at 927-6774, and you can speak with Nurse Nicorine Knight. She's a clinic coordinator, and she will educate you and walk you through the step of what is to be done.
Do you remember where you were and what you were doing when Nelson Mandela visited Jamaica in 1991? What a momentous occasion. Well, PBCJ, the People's Station, invites you to join us for the next PBCJ Watch Party, Saturday, June 28, from 6 to 9:30 p.m. at PBCJ, 5 to 9 South Odeon Avenue, Halfway Tree, where we will show Mandela in Jamaica, highlights of the visit by Nelson and Winnie Mandela in 1991. Titus in Town, episodes and scenes of the hilarious drama series starring Glenn Campbell and featuring Clive Uzzle Anderson, Rosemary Murray, Owen Blacker Ellis, Winston Bello Bell, and Claudette Pius. And Mirrors in Paradise, snippets of an upcoming local drama series produced by Barry Vision Film Productions for PBCJ, which hits your screens in July. Join us for unbridled laughter and kin-teeting while you watch some amazing local talent. Trust me, it'll go nice, it'll go epic, it'll go sweet. PBCJ Watch Party, Saturday, June 28, and 6 o'clock means 6 o'clock.
So who keeps our taxpayer money in check? Well, the PAC and PAAC help watch over the country's budget. And one might sound like it just have an extra A, but they're way different. Here's how. The PAAC and PAC are two committees that watch the money. The Public Accounts Committee reviews government projects after them close. They do a post-audit check to see what problems arose with the costs and call officials to explain decisions that cause budget mismanagement. And then they recommend corrective action. So the problem will happen from when, not happen again. But what about the money we are spending right now? The PAAC. That's how Public Administration and Appropriations Committee pretty much means your money will protect as it happen, we check. While projects go on, things are accurate. As government spend the nation's budget, PAAC reviews it. They examine proposals and summon officials to find problems before them don't use it. So the PAC and PAAC are two parliamentary committees that watch over the country's wallet to protect the budget and keep it in check. And you can get involved. Just visit jampja.org.
Today, we can report 2 consecutive years of reduction in major crimes and murders, with a significant reduction of almost 20% in murders for 2024.
Between January 2022 and January 2025, we have reduced murders by 51%, and January 2025 had the lowest monthly murder count since September 2014.
Our efforts have also resulted in the reduction of active gangs by 50%. We continue to increase firearm seizures, and in more communities, we are experiencing less violence. We will realize our vision of Jamaica as the place of choice to live, work, do business, raise families, and retire in peace and prosperity.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
A new story is being written for all Jamaicans. The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation is on a mission to transform lives. From increasing access to potable water, to providing secure homes for the most vulnerable, and helping you own a piece of the rock. We're revitalizing communities and preserving our environment. We're making an impact. See the difference. Feel the difference. Building a better Jamaica for you and me.
You can feel it. Make JC.
Zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there in the table on the side of the back. You fi check out the servings. Just do the maths. Not taking too much. Finger below the facts. Zoom in on the nutrition facts. It You feel zoom in on the nutrition facts. It there in the table on the side or the back. Vitamins, minerals, and vitamin 20% and more that good for you. You feel zoom in. Check the nutrition facts. You feel zoom in. Check the nutrition facts. You feel zoom in. Check the nutrition facts. Less sugar, less salt intake, and less fat. You feel zoom in.
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Jamaica Moves, the Heart Foundation of Jamaica, the National Health Fund, and JAPNET.
Senator Gale. Madam Clerk, do we have any apologies for absence? No apologies for absence. Okay. Members will recall we had the intervention of Ms. Sherry-Ann McGregor at our last sitting, and she certainly provided an awesome perspective in respect of the legal hurdles and challenges that we need to be mindful of in proposing the scope and the magnitude of a law addressing the needs and the care and protection of older persons. We are coming to the winding down phase. I did promise my committee members that I would address the issues of engagement with the public directly. And to that end, I did have discussions with the Clerk of the Parliament, who indicated that the Parliament is quite willing and able to support the committee at the committee's request. We discussed some means and fora in which that kind of engagement could take place. But I'm going to be very honest with my committee members. I think given the season that we are in, it is likely to be difficult in terms of timing to organize that kind of engagement. It is, however, necessary at some point in the process of the development of this legislation. And so I think whether it happens at the parliamentary level or it happens at the level of, the executive when the instructions are being prepared or when a draft has been prepared, it certainly must happen before it comes back to the Parliament to be put through the processes of the passage of legislation. And I take responsibility for it humbly, because it was mine to lead the charge on. But time just has not allowed me to have that organized in time for us to have gotten to this stage. And the stage we're at is this, that the parliamentary team has prepared the matrices of submissions, and I say that because it has been delivered to us in 3 parts, and members would note that the part 1 has conveniently placed the ministries and departments and agencies on 1 page. Part 2 has placed some of the other organizations that have come before us representing different stakeholders in the public, the CCRP, Mona Aging and Wellness, Psychiatric Association, etc. And part 3 has yet other members of the public, some more specifically individuals, offering their perspective and offering their experience in relation to the matters before the committee. And so I had asked that it be done this way for the convenience of members. I hope it's easy, therefore, to follow. It is still set out according to issues. So we would look at the first one, of course, being identified gaps in the legislative context and long-term care, et cetera, et cetera. So we have these completed matrix submissions. The other offering, which is slightly different from certainly what I'm used to in a committee, that I asked the parliamentary team to help to pull together, is a document which I will offer in due course to the members as part of our report to the Senate. And that is a document setting out, collating really from the submissions and from our discussions, the recommended pathway and the background to support the contextual background, and also and ending in a proposed roadmap for the crafting of that legislation. So we have set out from the discussions and the deliberations those matters that were largely consistent with all the submissions in terms of what that law should contain, and suggested what that roadmap for that legislation should look like, the kinds of provisions that it should contain. The hope is that that document will assist others down the line in preparing drafting instructions and checking and verifying the policy formula in quick time. That document, of course, has to be subject to some of what we're going to discuss today. So my hope is that we'll be able to sort of finalize it and get it to you certainly by the end of day today. And I know I'm asking my members a lot. Senator Morris didn't know what he did when he tabled this motion in the Senate, inviting a whole lot of work on these members. But I want to thank you all for your cooperation. All of the members of this committee have been engaged. Senator Morris himself has offered such a wealth of experience and shared that with us in his work and in relation to this particular mandate of this committee. And I really have been very well supported by all the members. So whenever I've asked members to just dive a little deeper and read documents and come back to me, they've all done it. So I just wanted to put that on record and to say thank you very much for what has truly been a national and bipartisan effort, and one that has had at its center the interest of the Jamaican people before anything else. And I really, really have appreciated that about this membership on this committee. So I'm going to ask you again, when this report comes to you later today, if you can make it a priority to just review it. It's an easy read, but just to review it so that we can take a look at it and sign off on it tomorrow, with the hope that we can have it tabled in the Senate. And why am I moving so quickly? Because I don't know. The season is an uncertain one. I don't hold any information. I have no idea when the discretionary powers will be exercised, but I do not want for the work of this committee to go to waste. and the dissolution of Parliament would, without landing a report in the Senate, would mean that the committee would have to be reestablished and reconstituted, and not necessarily mean that it could just pick up where it left off, because the membership might be completely different. And so I am asking the cooperation of my members to just let us dive deep today and complete what we have to complete, with the view to being able to table a report on Friday. With that said, I am going to allow, before we dive into the matrix, if there are any members who have any. Senator Morris? Okay, Senator Morris and then Senator Gale. Go ahead, Senator Morris.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Morris, we're hearing you. We're not seeing you,
yes,
but we're hearing you.
Let me turn on my video 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Pleasant good morning, members. And, I'm very happy to be participating again in the committee meeting and to acknowledge the tremendous guidance and work of the chair for the committee. I just wanted to find out, Madam Chair, I know that you don't have any control over the discretionary powers, but I just wanted to find out if this Friday will be the last sitting of the Senate for the parliamentary session, that is the session up to July.
Senator Morris, I am operating as if Friday is my last day, but I have no such information, and I suspect that information is above my pay grade at this point. But as anybody else is doing and listening to the airwaves and seeing the activity, I am operating as if Friday is the most important date for this committee and the date that we must finish and land a report, because we can't guarantee what happens after that. But we know we're meeting this Friday. We definitely know that. But I can't speak to the future. I don't have the crystal ball.
Well, the other point, Madam Chair, is I know we haven't had any, there's nothing that has come to this committee that has been contentious amongst the political divide. I'm just running over in my mind if there was ever a point that there was any disagreement on, but I know, I can't recall that, and I'm just hoping that in the report, that will come before us, it will reflect that, so that all of us can sign and give approval to the content. And even if there are any contentious issues, I hope that we will just have it settled, because I wouldn't want a document come to the Senate reflecting any issue of contention.
I don't think you have anything to worry about in that regard, Senator Morris. So far, the rough draft that I've seen is very consistent with our actual deliberations and the submissions that we received. I wouldn't use the word contentious at all. What I would say, though, is that I think we're going to have to spend some time tomorrow really fleshing out amongst ourselves the framework for that commission/advocate. About 3, I think, different proposals were made to us, and I think different members liked different features. So as I see it, what I would hope to lead tomorrow is a discussion setting out the 1, 2, 3 features of each proposal having members center their minds to that. If that's something that I can sort of put in writing to my members later this evening, I will try to do that, so that you have it to kind of reflect on for tomorrow. But I imagine that to be the one part that I see will take us a little time to address our minds to.
Okay, Madam Chair. All right, looking forward to seeing it.
Okay, Senator Morris. Senator Gale.
You know, I think you have somehow pushed this committee very far, and the level of acceleration worth it. And I'm using this opportunity to thank all those who attended and made valuable recommendations. And I know to get this far in looking at the matrices, and I'm now hearing that work has been done behind the scenes to establish a report that includes a roadmap. I want to commend the technical team, the parliamentary team, for the work done behind the scenes.
And specifically, Senator Gale, the Legislative Council Department, and in particular, Council Ms. Zimenez, who I think has done a lot of the heavy lifting for us. But the Legislative Council Department and our committee clerk, who has been helping to coordinate and to review and to check in with me and to make sure that I was communicating what I needed to communicate to my members at different times. So it has been a mammoth effort, and so your commendations are well placed.
You know, as a trade unionist, when I see that kind of work, I could also offer other recommendations to support it. But you know, the kind of work that was done is exceptional, and we are at this stage. What I think we need to concentrate on, and I'm happy that I'm hearing a roadmap, because it would tell that we have taken it this far, and it's instructive for those others who may look at this, including the Ministry of Labor, who is the holder, accountable ministry for this, to have some sort of a pathway in direction. What I think we need to do is going through these matrices to identify the most critical priority areas that we must suggest and recommend that should form part of any kind of legislation. This is good work. One of the things we don't want to happen is for this work to be done and it is retired somewhere or aged, no pun intended, given the objectives that we are pursuing. It must be ongoing work. I hear your concerns regarding an objective that was never met, that interface with the public. But in my mind, Chair, consultation is always ongoing. Consultation is not an event or a destination. It's a kind of journey, and nothing stops the Parliament beyond this to be able to have further consultation with the wider public to work on what will be the outcome of the legislation. So those would be my comments, Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Gale. And I certainly agree with you. I mean, we did have, representative groups, but we had all agreed and opined that we wanted to sort of press flesh more directly with the public. And I don't know that we're precluded from doing that. What I want to focus on is finalizing something that is tabled in the Senate so that the record of the work is there and the recommendations of this committee is put on record for it to be taken elsewhere. I don't know that means I don't know that that means that the committee necessarily ceases, because I have a number of mechanisms that would allow us to continue if we have life. And I can discuss that with my committee members, you know, after this session. But I mean, certainly there was one speaker that Senator Fraser Binns had proposed that we invite to come just recently, and I did indicate to her that once we have life, that I would put it to the members to hear further information. It's not going to hurt, even with a report tabled, and it will certainly help to inform us in our deliberations in the Senate at a later time. So with that said, and I don't have any other members with their hands up, okay. With that said, I want to begin the review of the matrix, and I am going to ask members.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Senator Morris?
Yeah, I just want to make an intervention because
Sure.
procedurally, I think that once the report is tabled in the Senate,
We become
that
non-functional.
constitute the end of the committee because we would have completed our mandate, unless it is that you are going to ask for, you know, special consideration, you know, but you would have to get some guidance from the parliamentary team on that. But I understand that from the report is tabled, that's the end of the life of the committee.
You're correct, Senator Morris, but I do have a legislative pathway to the recall of the committee, if that's what I would call it at this point. It can be reconstituted in a similar fashion if we have life. All right. So members, the matrix is before us. I am going to propose, subject to members offering a more efficient methodology, that we have 3 parts, part 1, part 2, part 3, that we take it issue by issue, so that we're looking at all 3 parts at the same time. And I would ask members to let us be as efficient as we can, so that for those matters that don't require much discussion, that we have already had, that we not necessarily repeat, but just indicate our agreement or not. There are going to be matters I do know, like what I suggested earlier in response to Senator Morris, that will take us a little bit more time. But for those that we can quickly move past because we've already had sufficient and long discussion about them, I invite us to do so. I would also ask Madam Clerk, the preparer of the matrix, if who again? Ms. Hamilton. Ms. Hamilton? Ms. Hamilton, would you be kind enough to be our orator of the matrix this morning? I only have Senator Gale in the chamber, and I don't want to. I already imposed on him enough as my faithful sitting member in person. So if we could go through and just read the points one by one for each submission that was made. Yes? Comfortable? I'd put you on the spot. Sorry. You see, that's how great this team has been in that. I keep putting them on the spot and they keep rising to the occasion. Thank you so much. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. Hamilton. So we're starting with part 1 to part 2 to part 3. Yes, go ahead.
All right, good morning, everyone. All right, so we'll be starting with statin. I must say that some of the points that are listed in the matrix, they were general recommendations, but because they didn't fall under the larger themes, they were placed in the first section. So you might not see it was recommended that this and that should be done, but it will be just a general statement. All right. So for statin, the first point, the elderly population is complex and nuanced, requiring more targeted data collection beyond what current surveys offer. Poverty prevalence among the elderly is a significant issue characterized by economic vulnerability, food insecurity, substantial healthcare expenses, low health insurance coverage, limited access to social security, poor housing conditions, and limited access to basic amenities. It's also stated to prioritize infrastructure and policy responses to address the demographic shift toward an aging population. There is a need to better understand how elderly individuals send and receive communication, especially given the limited digital access among some segments. Non-communicable diseases like hypertension, diabetes, and arthritis are highly prevalent in elderly age groups. The intersection between aging, productivity, and national economic growth must be emphasized. For example, the silver economy. Existing social protection programs may not be adequately reaching the elderly, as evidenced by low enrollment in initiatives like NHF and JDEP. The next theme, protection from abuse and neglect. The Act should address violence against older people, stipulating the offenses against the older adults and the penalties for each offenses.
All right, so what I'm seeing here are findings in the first instance. And then we get to one where it suggests something that can form part of a legislation. So could we, for some purpose, pull out those that require or suggest recommendations for either legislations or policies? And then we could put the findings in another kind of parking lot. Could we take that approach, Chair?
Yes, we can, and I'll do better guidance on that as we go along. Yeah. So we're looking at identified gaps and legislative context. And for many of these, if you look at the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, it's really background information. It's contextual, exactly what it says, contextual information. In relation to the concerns of older persons. But that is not true, for instance, if you look at part 2 of the matrix, where if you look at the MONA aging and wellness, their first identified gap is the need to introduce a Bill of Rights for older persons. So of course that would include matters that should properly come within a law. I'm just skimming again. Okay, so in fact, MONA aging and wellness, in that particular section, the identified gaps and legislative context is the only comment that would properly be captured in law. I think we'll see the others for the rest in the next issue, which would be the protection from abuse and neglect.
Abuse, right.
So what I would say then, is, can we take a look at the MONA aging and wellness remark, and then we move to the next issue. Since
in terms of the flow, we could take each of them and just agree on what.
In other words, do it submission by submission instead of issue by issue?
Yeah, because if we do it issue by issue, we'd have to be going all over the various.
Fair enough,
places.
members.
Yeah.
Senator Gale has proposed a different approach, so we will take it submission by submission instead of issue by issue. Very well? Thank you.
Agreed, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Senator Morris.
Continuing with statin, we're under protection from abuse and neglect. First point, the Act should address violence against older people, stipulating the offenses against older adults and the penalties for such offenses. Next point. All persons must report suspected abuse of the elderly, similar to child abuse laws. Next point. The Act must establish a court or commission to investigate and prosecute abuse cases. Protect whistleblowers, on a point. Remove individuals at risk, ban suspected abusers from contacting victims. Reports of financial abuse must be allowed anonymously with identity protection. Penalties must be imposed on those who fail to act on reports of elderly abuse. Moving on to the next theme, legal rights and framework. Elderly persons have rights specific to them, similar to child rights. The Act should provide legal protection for seniors against abuse, define key terms, including senior citizens, types of abuse, and relative.
1 second. Members, just to be clear, as Ms. Hamilton is reading, if there are objections, in other words, if we are disagreeing the proposal, then I would ask you to speak up. You don't raise your hand, just speak into your mic, those who are online.
Next theme, healthcare and mental wellness. Universal access to quality healthcare, provision of health aids and differentiated services, training and certification in health-related support. Next theme, social protection and income security. Improve the social pension grant program, access eligibility criteria and awareness, prepare population for retirement, expand livelihood and market-based opportunities for the elderly, expand social protection coverage such as social insurance, pensions, health insurance, and examine viability of pension fund investments. We're at page 12. We just did social protection and income security. We're now at housing infrastructure and accessibility under statin. Page 12, based on my copy. Okay.
Just to note, so these matters under social protection and income security are not legislative matters. Those are policy directives, okay? So I'll also indicate as we go along. Continue, Ms. Hamilton.
All right. Housing, infrastructure, and accessibility. Invest in housing solutions that accommodate the elderly. Improve housing quality and access to basic amenities. Re-engineer housing and infrastructure to support a growing elderly population. Family and community integration. Enhance family support systems and community solidarity. Implement interventions in support of caregivers and promote independent living for elderly persons. institutional capacity and governance, strengthen institutional and infrastructural networks for partnerships and collaboration, public-private partnerships to support elderly well-being, re-examine national policies to include issues relating to the elderly, such as policy coherence. Next theme, data and digital systems. Conduct a targeted national survey on the elderly to inform policies. Establish a steering committee or a working group to develop survey tools and define data needs. Partner with government agencies and parliament to fund and conduct elderly-specific surveys. Provide rural, urban, gender, and age disaggregated data on social, for example, on social protection, health insurance, or digital use. Report on prevalence of disability, including disaggregated data by task, such as walking or remembering. Explore and report how elderly persons access and send information through communication channels. Provide gender disaggregated labor participation data, especially on elderly women. Support collection of disaggregated data to inform pension reform, the silver economy, and growth strategies. Promote the silver.
I'm going to interrupt you there just for my members and for our deliberation. This could sound like an area that's not a legislative fix either, but it actually is. I'm going to propose to my members that they consider, as in the final analysis, when you look at the report, a requirement that whatever is the regulatory authority, whatever is that final mechanism that we decide on, that we include as part of its duties under the Act some responsibility for data gathering, and we can it's not really for us to flesh it out, but and I'm saying so because we had the intervention from Statin, we had other submissions speak to the lack of data or disaggregated data, which drives decision making. And so in creating the powers and duties of whatever that body should be, whether it must be their remit or they seek it from in collaboration with a Statin or another body, that we place that power in an act, or propose that it be placed in an act, because that will guide how that entity is provided for in the budget. So if my members agree with that, then if we can just make a note for that point. Yes?
Next point, promote the silver economy as a strategic growth area. Highlight the importance of productivity among elderly and working age populations. Integrate aging concerns into the national policy for senior citizens and the National Population and Sustainable Development Policy. They made reference to Goal 8 of what was stated. By 2030, provisions are in place to enable the older population, 60 years and over, to lead fulfilling, functional, and productive lives. Next
that concludes Statin.
Yes.
And we look now at the Legal Reform Department.
Legal reform. Identified gaps and legislative context. First point, there is no single law on the elderly, and the facilities and services are not part of a holistic program. The services provided by the National Council for the Elderly are not mandated in legislation. Legislatively, very little progress has been made. Next, the Disabilities Act runs contrary to the principles when it regards an elderly person as a person with a disability. The National Council for Senior Citizens was not established by a statute. The adoption of the Madrid Plan of Action though widely accepted, is not obligatory. Protection from abuse and neglect. The Act should provide for mandatory reporting of elder abuse by health and social care professionals. Institutions providing care to the elderly must be subject to regular inspections and penalties for non-compliance. Establish a centralized body to receive, investigate, and respond to reports of elder abuse. The law should criminalize specific acts of abuse against the elderly, such as physical, sexual, emotional, or financial abuse. Legal rights and framework. The law should set out a clear legal framework for the care and protection of the elderly. The legislation must define elderly and other key terms such as caregiver, abuse, neglect, and institution. There should be a requirement to report abuse and penalties for failure to do so. The Act should include provisions for protective orders, including restraining orders and orders for removal from abusive situations. Include provisions that allow for legal recourse for elderly persons who are victims of neglect, abandonment, or abuse. Provide a legal basis for the appointment of guardians or substitute decision makers in cases where the elderly are unable to care for themselves. Address property and financial abuse, including misappropriation of pensions or assets. Clearly define the rights of the elderly, including the right to dignity, autonomy, and participation in decision-making affecting their lives. Healthcare and mental wellness. The legislative framework does not provide for the holistic care of the elderly. While some of the services aimed at addressing the physical needs are being delivered, the educational, mental, and emotional needs require attention. Under social protection and income security, a comment was made. Pension payments made to former employees and self-employed contributors under this law is a significant source of income during the elderly years. The pension exemption has been increased from $80,000 to $250,040 effective January 1, 2025. Housing infrastructure and accessibility. A responsibility is also placed on the state to provide for the housing needs of elders. Advocate for housing solutions from the National Policy for Senior Citizens Action Plan. Family and community integration. The Maintenance Act imposes a statutory duty on adult children to maintain parents and grandparents, should promote family activities and family involvement, establish a national program for support at community level. Institutional capacity and governance. Establish a coordinating body with responsibility for oversight, enforcement, and policy development related to elderly care. Create an elderly care and protection agency to manage implementation of the Act. Assign responsibility for interagency coordination to a central authority, for example, Ministry of Labor and Social Security or a new commission.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Senator Mars.
This is one of the issues.
Yes, I think so.
You're talking about?
Yes, yes, because it was suggested as an agency for the implementation of the Act. I think further down we'll see another submission suggesting a commission, and even further there was a discussion about an advocate similar to the children's advocate. There are also there was also suggestions of the need for a tribunal, so that would be a little different from the regulatory implementing entity. The tribunal being, and I think it was suggested that something similar to what exists in the
Disabilities Act. Yes, I had raised that matter.
Right, I think I remember that. So I think we have to collate all of that and to figure out what really is the best, most workable proposal that we're making, with the understanding, of course, that once we indicate what we want this entity to be able to do, that further down the line in terms of preparing drafting instructions, once this is out of our remit, it can further be fleshed out. So I don't think we have to get too granular, but I think we have to be clear about what our proposal is in terms of the function of that entity.
Yeah, because what I see here, Madam Chair, is probably the nomenclature, because here it is referencing an agency as to whether it's, and elsewhere it might be a commission. But I think it is speaking to the same thing, you know?
Yes.
And it's for us to determine what is done by each, you know, and who constitute the agency / you know, commission or whatever. So let us go along. It just jumped at me as I saw it.
Yes, thank you for that, Senator Morris. Yes. Ms. Hamilton.
Last point, institutional responsibilities under the Act must be clearly defined across ministries and agencies.
That's something to asterisk for our report, because too often when the Act isn't clear, we have a lot of confusion in the implementation stage. Go ahead.
Data and digital.
Is that Senator Longmore?
Yes, it is. It is I. Good morning.
Yes, I did say earlier, Senator Longmore, if you have an intervention online, and we've been using the raise hand feature, but please just jump in, because we're not monitoring you so heavily this morning because of the moving parts in the chamber.
Right. So, yeah, I'm actually signed in from an instrument that my camera is having an issue, and I'm not finding that said raise hand feature. So I wanted to just bring in a point where it's a few steps back, but I was there trying to find the raise hand feature, where we spoke to the mental wellness and emotional well-being. I don't know if we could just go flip back there. Sorry for the
that
delay.
Would be page 9.
Yes. Considering the level of concerns we have around, especially the cognitive aspects and the cognitive capacities, the various presenters that we've had, and the ramifications, especially for the elderly, that is based on cognitive functioning. I wonder if you see how we highlighted emotional care. I'm wondering if we should specifically highlight cognitive capacities, etc., in this at that point.
I'm not sure if I'm clear on where you're highlighting it.
So where we have mental wellness, and it went on to say emotional well-being, I think, gosh, where is it?
Ms. Hamilton, you can point me to that. I'm looking at 9. Was it? Or are you thinking of the more general section?
The more general, the highlighting of emotional well-being is somewhat secondary to for the elderly, to their cognitive functioning, and I say that with much caution. But what I wanted to bring is the level of focus we need to have on said cognitive functioning for the elderly. So is either we leave it at mental wellness and that will encompass all, but to highlight emotional well-being and not highlight cognitive capacity, I think would be shortchanging the specific nature of this piece of legislation for the elderly.
Are you seeing the section that she's talking about, Ms. Hamilton? You think she's on page 7?
All right, if you're not able to find it, I will look for it myself. And because of the timing of the meeting, I'm actually having to multitask, as you can imagine, because this wasn't planned for. But I'll find the section and get back to it then.
Oh, very well. The other thing I want to just remind members is that we're looking at what is the summary of the submissions. So how it is expressed here is being lifted from how the presenters expressed it in their submissions. Once we agree the intent, then we can capture any additions.
That is exactly why I raised the point, because that aspect of so many of our presentations were focused on that cognitive capacity.
Yes, but I'm not understanding, Senator Longmore, what is the legislative proposal that you're saying?
To highlight cognitive capacity and its relevance.
It where? I mean, just
well, that's what I'm saying. Since you're not able to find I was listening in, and I heard mention of the highlighting of mental wellness and emotional well-being. My point is that the cognitive capacity of the elderly, as we have seen in so many of our presentations, is of paramount interest to us. If the team is not able to find that area of focus that was mentioned before, I will look for it myself and I will bring it back to the attention of the committee.
Okay, thank you.
The point being that the cognitive aspects of our elderly is so very important that it should be highlighted, it is somewhat secondary to emotional well-being when it comes to
I don't think there was a legislative proposal being made in that. I think it was a background context that was being captured. But I take your point.
I'm sorry. I believe she is referring to the comment under healthcare and mental wellness. The legislative framework does not... That's page 9 on my copy. It's under healthcare and mental wellness.
Yes. Go ahead.
The legislative framework does not provide for the holistic care of elderly. While some services aimed at addressing the physical needs are being delivered, the educational, mental, and emotional needs require attention.
Exactly there. And especially the cognitive capacity of our elderly is not being fulsomely addressed.
Yes, but Senator Longmore, that's not a legislative proposal. It's just a comment.
I didn't say it was a legislative proposal, Chair. I'm bringing it to the point that we are here putting the background for the need of this piece of legislation.
No, we're not. That's not what we're doing. We're going through the submissions to agree those recommendations that we're going to propose should be captured in law. So the background matters. But that's not a proposal.
Okay, Chair. Okay. You can skip the intervention. Skip it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hamilton.
The next comment is under data and digital systems. Improve data management from national policy.
What page is that, Ms. Hamilton?
That's page 15, the theme, data and digital systems.
Go ahead.
Improve data management from National Policy for Senior Citizens Action Plan. The absence of quantitative and qualitative data means that the data required to inform policy development is difficult to obtain.
Okay, so that just goes back to a provision that makes it part of the duty to do data collection and data mining. Again, from the authority, yes. Continue, Ms. Hamilton.
Regulation of nursing homes and health facilities. Licensing of all facilities offering residential care for elderly persons should be mandatory. Facilities should be required to meet minimum care standards and be subject to oversight. Include requirements for staff training and qualification in geriatric care. introduce a code of conduct for employees in elderly care institutions. Now on to Ministry of Local Government.
Thank you.
Protection from abuse and neglect. Maintain and strengthen a zero-tolerance policy for abuse within facilities and ensure all incidents are investigated and reported to appropriate authorities, including the police. Healthcare and mental wellness. We're on page 9, my copy.
Thank you.
Access to health care for the elderly by prioritizing their transportation needs to healthcare facilities and minimize their waiting time at healthcare facilities. Increase the capacity of community-based care to allow the elderly to age in place with support from trained community health aides. Housing infrastructure and accessibility, page 12. Develop a framework to address the poor state of housing for the elderly, to include a dedicated fund for retrofitting elderly homes to ensure they meet modern standards and are fully equipped with essential amenities such as proper sanitation facilities and accessibility designs. That should be and accessible designs for mobility. Family and community integration. Further explore ways to enhance family support for elderly individuals, especially in situations where cultural and generational issues may hinder that support. Institutional capacity and governance. Expand the capacity of infirmaries or establish new ones to meet increasing demand for elderly care due to full capacity and existing wait lists. All right, that's the last comment for Ministry of Local Government. Now on to...
Thank you.
Ministry of Labor and Social Security and the National Council for Senior Citizens Advisory Board. Identified gaps and legislative context. Recognize that older people often face unique challenges that require specific protections, such as discrimination, abuse, and social exclusion. Uphold the rights of older persons as essential for a just and inclusive society. Promote equality and non-discrimination on the basis of age. Support the right to life and dignity in old age. Uphold autonomy in decision-making. Enable older persons to participate in the conduct of public affairs and be elected to political office. Protect the right to liberty, private and family life, and freedom from involuntary medical experimentation without consent. Align the legislation with existing policies and laws, including the National Policy for Senior Citizens Disabilities Act and Nursing Homes Registration Act. Promote public education on aging, parental responsibility, and reciprocal care in later life. Protection from abuse and neglect. Prohibit elder abuse. Establish penalties for elder abuse. Identify mandatory reporters. Mandate notification of abuse of a senior citizen. Provide protection from liability for reporters or notifiers. Ensure confidentiality. Investigate notifications of abuse, authorize designated persons and address obstruction of such persons, maintain a register of abusers, establish intervention orders, designate social workers, healthcare professionals, elder care providers, and law enforcement as mandatory reporters. Consider penalties such as professional sanctions or criminal charges. Enforce zero tolerance policy for abusers in infirmaries. Ensure police involvement and dismissal of offenders. Long-term care. Outline the rights of older persons receiving community-based care and support services. Requires registration of community-based care and support services. Develop guidelines and minimum standards for persons providing home-based care. Include monitoring and evaluation of community-based care and support services in law and identify responsible entities. Define rights of older persons in residential facilities. Prohibit the operation of unregistered residential facilities. Require registration of residential facilities. Assign social workers to monitor registered residential facilities. Expand facilities to meet demand. Currently, over 600 individuals are on the waiting list. Consider partnerships for transitional housing and community-based care to reduce institutionalization. Define senior citizens, older persons in the legislation. Rights related to autonomy to be considered in context of prevailing situations, such as seniors with dementia and legal requirements for power of attorney and guardianship. An older person has a right to make decisions. An older person shall be assumed to have capacity unless it is established that the person lacks capacity. An older person is not to be treated as unable to make a decision merely because they make an unwise decision. The age at which a person is defined as elderly must be clarified in legislation. Healthcare and mental wellness. Ensure access to opportunities that promote optimal levels of social, physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Equip infirmaries with therapeutic parks, dietitians, physiotherapists, and trained staff to promote holistic well-being. Increase access to ambulances for health emergency through partnership with Chase Fund. Address mental health and addiction within elderly homeless programming. Enable social protection and income security. Page 11.
Chair?
Yes, Senator.
Yes, I have the.
Senator
yes, thank you.
Longmore. Go ahead.
Okay, having the same concern. Let me see if I can try and go on camera this time. Yes, Chair, thank you. All right. I am repeating the concern that I had before, where generally I'm not hearing the provision for the specific reflection of concerns around the cognitive aspects of elderly care. Dementia is one aspect of it. I heard regarding the power of attorney. There might be other circumstances that may require someone to have power of attorney for an individual. So we could expand that to say dementia or any other aspects of impairment of functioning, whether it be psychosis or some other.
Expand what, Senator Longmore?
What was just read, Senator Chairperson?
Senator Longmore, to be clear.
The page that was just read.
Hold on a second. Let me just clarify something. We are reading the submissions that have already been presented to us. These are not proposals crafted that we have crafted. We have already heard these submissions. So for you to say that you're not hearing something
it may very well be so. It means that the presenter did not say so. So we are either agreeing or we're disagreeing. But what I would say is, remember now, we're not going through issue by issue. We're going through presenter by presenter. So I suspect what the parts of our hearings where we discussed that and it was more wholesomely captured, you will probably hear when we look at the submissions for Mona Aging and Wellness, where I think you had long discussions with Prof. Shearer on that day, and you'll probably hear it for Sandra Latiba there. But for sure, the Ministry of Labour did not speak to that. So we can't input into what we're capturing that they said, but note it, because we're going to come to a point where we have to say, okay, members, in the report, do you agree this? What must be expanded? What must not be expanded? Okay?
Okay, Chair. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Morris?
I think what would be useful is for Dr. Longmore to note her specific concern so that when we come now to crafting the report, that we will be responsible for making our input.
Right.
Then she could include her concerns there.
Right. But I don't wish for you to withhold your comment if you want to make a note, Senator Morris and Senator Longmore, because the team is noting it so that when we, I mean, like I said, we have begun the drafting, so when we finalize, we will be able to include it for your Reading King tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. That is perhaps where my mind was at, to try to just make sure that we don't miss this very important point when we're putting together the final pieces. Thank you.
Senator. Got you. Thank you. Senator Gill.
Just to be clear, because my thinking was that these areas would have been extrapolated from the various recommendations.
Yes, they were.
And we're taking what would have been aligned across the different presenters. Now, we're not changing anything.
Right.
What we are doing is that we're going to determine if we're going to agree with these recommendations or we're going to disagree. I am making notes as to some of the common threads that may have, been presented right through the various recommendations. And now, based on what Senator Morris would have indicated, these concerns that we may have when we are going through what the report, can expand there to include some of our thoughts or some of our own recommendations as to how we can, the report can benefit.
Yes,
we're not changing anything.
It's useful to hear your thoughts even now, because, like I said, it's ongoing work. And obviously the committee knows that we are doing background work to support the committee. So if we know, then we can get it in even before we land it to you. Okay? Thank you.
Social protection and income security. Enable participation in activities that enhance income generating capacity. Address the issue of elderly property owners lacking family support.
First of that is not a matter for legislation. The second of that, you'll remember coming out of Ms. Sharon McGregor's presentation, her concerns about property and how property is managed for older persons. Continue, Ms. Hamilton.
Housing infrastructure and accessibility. Ensure older persons can live in environments that cater to their changing capacities. Develop a framework to retrofit homes for elderly individuals. Create a dedicated fund to support home retrofitting. Expand indigent housing programs. and improve shelter conditions. Family and community integration. Enable participation in community life in positions appropriate to individual interests and capabilities. Support participation in intergenerational programs. Support establishment and participation in structures and associations for older persons. Strengthen family values and societal awareness of the importance of supporting the elderly. Encourage cultural shifts toward honoring parental responsibilities and reciprocal elder care. Institutional capacity and governance, page 14. Establish a senior citizens or older persons advocate who is independent and reports to Parliament.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Senator Morris.
Since you're saying that, when we have these concerns, we can just highlight it.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. The point about a fund, a housing fund, has been raised by more than one presenters in their presentation. And what I think, from what I understand where we are now, you have the Ministry of Housing, through the Housing Act, makes provision for a housing fund. And you have the NHT that does provide grants for contributors to retrofit their houses in terms of accessibility. So what we probably need to do in that context is to make sure that both facilities there have provisions for elderly persons. On one hand, the NHT would deal with elderly persons who have been contributors to the fund, and then the housing fund under the Housing Act would deal with those individuals who are not contributors to any scheme at all. You got me, Madam Chair?
Senator Morris, respectfully, I'm not sure if I'm understanding what you're proposing as the legislative change. What would change? Because doesn't the NHT already deal with older persons who are contributors?
Yes.
So what would be the change you're proposing?
Well, and that is what I'm saying, that, they are proposing that a housing fund be established. Right. And I'm saying that there is no need for that to take place.
Okay.
Because you have the NHT that does that already for seniors who have contributed. And then the Housing Act makes provision for a housing fund. And there you could propose amendments there for, non-contributors of the NHT to benefit from such a fund.
Which they do, don't they? Yes.
I don't think it is in law. I don't think it is in law.
Okay. So it's for the non-contributors, to NHT to benefit.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Noted. Ms. Hamilton.
All right. Assign functions to the advocate, including administrative, consultative, educational, advisory, investigative, legal, and regulatory roles. Establish a tribunal appointed by Cabinet to handle complaints, arbitration, and mediation with powers equivalent to a civil court.
I'm sorry, I lost where we were.
We are under institutional capacity and governance, page 14.
No, just 14. Tell me by the page. 12. 14. Oh no, my paper is not. Establish capacity. Sorry, establish, okay. I'm seeing it now.
It's the second point. Started from the second point down.
Very well, thank you.
All right. Consider whether the tribunal should mirror the Disabilities Rights Tribunal and handle guardianship matters to avoid court delays. Maintain oversight through the Board of Supervision and Poor Relief Departments. Standardize inspections of public and private facilities using structured frameworks. Data and digital systems. Establish a confidential voluntary senior citizens register maintained by the NCSC. Collect data on gender distribution and waiting list across infirmaries.
A number of recommendations are made here. The advocacy, the tribunal, consider another body. I mean, there has to be some fleshing out of these functioning and roles, because looking at them based on their recommendations, they seem to be overlapping in nature.
How I'm reading this is that, and if I recall when they had come before us, the advocate would be more an overseer, regulator, and
a standalone kind of setup.
Somebody who is on the ground inquiring into
Right.
matters dealing with older persons. The tribunal would be hearing complaints in relation to older persons. So if an older person perhaps was subject of some sort of discrimination or some sort of prejudice, that such complaints could be brought before this tribunal. I think there was another body who might have also suggested a tribunal.
A tribunal.
And a tribunal, so a tribunal would be different from the advocate or the commission. The tribunal would be like a sort of a quasi-judicial body making decisions in disputed matters.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
it was the Mona Aging and Wellness with Professor Shearer was the other body that had suggested the tribunal.
Yes.
And I think it was then that I made the distinction with the tribunal under the Disabilities Act. But I think, Madam Chair, as the reading unfolds, I think what it needs to be done is that the Council for Senior Citizens need to be established as a body corporate in law, and that would take on the function and the recommendations that you're hearing about a commission versus an agency. So the Council for the Senior Citizens would now become the agency, the state agency that has responsibility for all senior citizens matters. Then you could establish in law a senior citizens advocate who would be like an ambassador, or the function could be similar to the child care and protection advocate. And that person would work with the Council for Senior Citizens. And then you would have now distinctly the Senior Citizens Tribunal, where any matter of discrimination or violation of the rights of the senior citizens would go to that entity for adjudication. But the preliminary investigation would have to be done by the Council for Senior Citizens and also the senior citizens advocate, because these are the institutional framework that would refer cases now to the senior citizens tribunal.
Senator Morris, can I offer some words of caution? I largely agree with you, but I just want to offer some words of caution in terms of what I'm going to loosely refer to as the separation of powers. The National Council for Senior Citizens, in its current form, is mandated to manage certain administrative programs that include care programs, is also mandated to investigate and inquire into the well-being of senior citizens, albeit not mandates that are legislatively supported. These are really central ministry directives, as it were. The difficulty that I see in the play between what I will loosely refer to as an older person's advocate versus the National Council is that that advocate has legal jurisdiction, would have, so we're talking about an attorney, somebody with legal qualification, who is empowered to enter representation in a judicial body on behalf of an older person. That person would therefore be required in some cases to have some look or to take some look at the operation of the Senior Citizens Council itself, because if in discharging its responsibilities, the council itself were to fall afoul of its mandate or improperly discharge its duty, then it would be the job of the advocate, who would have to be separate from the council, to bring the council to book. So the council also would fall within the oversight mandate of the advocate. So I don't think you want to place one within the precincts of the other. I think you have to separate that legal representative role from the administrative implementing role. And then the tribunal, of course, is also completely separate, because it has to be an independent body that is taking matters and hearing matters. So it can't be that the tribunal is a tribunal within the council. It has to be that it's a separate body, and the council can make submissions to the tribunal like any other person. So that's why...
Yes, Madam Chair, and that is what I'm suggesting. I wasn't suggesting otherwise, because that is how the Disability Act structures the current formulation for the interplay between the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities and the Disability Rights Tribunal.
Right.
So, it's not that the Disability Rights Tribunal is a creature of the JCPD, but in the legislation there is not a disability advocate. But I agree with you that the three would be separate from each other. So I wasn't suggesting that they are a part of one entity.
Very well.
Right?
Very well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One of the things I'm seeing also, Chair, in the role of this advocate that has to be separate, I'm seeing the advocate as a repository of receiving complaints. Yeah? Because right now, there is no avenue for receiving complaints, and that was one of the grayest areas in my mind coming through recommendations. the absence of any repository to receive complaint, and that could be a role established by the advocate. And so you can't have the advocate receiving complaints and their role and responsibilities subsumed anywhere else. It's a standalone, independent organ for the purposes of any legislation.
Thank you. Ms. Hamilton?
Wandering registry.
Just remind where you are before you start, please. Just reset the committee.
I am at page 19 based on my copy. I'm at wandering registry.
Yeah.
All right. Create a registry for persons prone to wandering. Enable voluntary registration with a recent photo accessible to police via mobile or computer devices. Use media and social media alerts to aid quick identification and recovery. Use data to identify persons with dementia or Alzheimer's who are unable to provide identifying information. Regulation of nursing homes and health facilities. Monitor both private and government elderly care homes for compliance. Ensure private nursing homes meet established health and safety standards. Require standard operating procedures and regular inspections. That's the end for Ministry of Labor. We're now on to Ministry of Health and Wellness. Identified gaps and legislative context. Some elderly patients remain in hospital up to 10 years due to abandonment. The ministry recognizes the need for multi-sectoral coordination and is currently developing relevant frameworks. There are currently only 6 inspectors managing hundreds of facilities across the island. Financial limitations often result in patients being transferred from private to public facilities, which must legally accept them.
Mine is 2. Oh, no, there we go. Try again? No?
Anything? Yes.
Yes,
We're
there we
back.
go.
Protection from abuse and neglect. Mandatory reporting of elder abuse, physical and mental. Review of laws related to decision-making substitutes, guardianship, orders, power of attorney, wills, and estate. The public health inspectors conduct inspections involving interviews with staff and sometimes residents to verify practices and gather additional information about day-to-day operations. The ministry has considered dementia and Alzheimer's under a holistic plan for the elderly, which was being finalized by consultants. Legal rights and framework. The government should consider further increasing the statutory retirement age. The Maintenance Act allows for a local authority or government agency providing assistance in respect of the maintenance of a dependent to make an application to the court for a maintenance order. There could be a role that the ministry plays in advising elderly clients on their legal options and remedies in the courts for maintenance where there are children or grandchildren known to them who would be able to provide financial support. The Mental Health Act should be amended, particularly the provisions regarding who can apply for guardianship. The nursing home Yes, we're back. The Nursing Homes Registration Act 1934 is outdated and needs revision to give regulatory bodies sufficient authority. Stronger legal provisions are needed to assign responsibility to persons listed as next of kin or emergency contacts. A designated body should be empowered by law to act on behalf of cognitively impaired elderly persons who are denied access to their own property despite being the legal owner. Healthcare and mental wellness. The development of a comprehensive essential health service package for older persons under the primary healthcare reform strategy is a critical step. Expand community-based healthcare services to support vulnerable elderly persons. Inclusion of early dementia screening from age 50 or 55, especially for persons with cardiovascular risks. Dementia-related planning should include midlife studies and brain imaging such as MRIs. NHF and JDEP cards should be expanded to ensure more accessible health care for the elderly, particularly for catastrophic conditions like cancer. The NHF Act should be reviewed to identify additional sources of funding to ensure the fund's long-term sustainability. Legislation should manage drug costs similar to the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act. Inclusion of non-pharmaceuticals in the NHF benefit list should be considered. Social protection and income security. Statutory retirement age should be increased to reduce the risk of old age poverty and support financial independence for longer. Many elderly are stranded in hospital due to abandonment by relatives. Legal reforms should address how responsibility is assigned and costs recovered. Housing infrastructure and accessibility. Many health facilities are not designed or oriented to cater to the needs of older adults with disabilities such as physical, visual, hearing impairments. Inadequate transportation services pose a challenge for older adults accessing health services. Family and community integration. The primary healthcare reform policy promotes coordination between health and social services and envisions community hubs to increase access and awareness of services. There should be agreements between the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Local Government for referral of abandonment or abandoned elderly from hospitals to poor relief or infirmaries. Institutional capacity and governance. The NHF Act should be amended to address sustainability and accommodate additional responsibilities as healthcare demands increase. Then the Nursing Homes Registration Act should be modernized and the legal framework governing elderly care must be overhauled. Regulators lack sufficient legal power to enforce standards. Legislation must be strengthened in this regard. Submit recommendations for operational and staffing gaps within regulatory bodies to improve effectiveness. We're now at data and digital systems. Build an information system to support continuity and information sharing across services. Follow-up in the community is done by community health aides to maintain engagement with elderly patients. Mandatory tracking of elderly patients within the health system should be integrated with social services. This is a general comment. NHF maintains a 92% of drug fill rate and expanding prescription processing to meet growing demand. We're now on regulation of nursing homes and health facilities. Only 30 of 200 facilities are formally registered. Regulatory compliance must be enforced and support offered to help homes meet standards. Private hospitals, ambulatory surgery centers, and long-term care facilities must be subject to thorough inspections and licensing procedures. Inspections must involve documentation review, direct observation, and staff interviews conducted 1 to 2 times per year, depending on facility type. Registered facilities must have nursing and physician staff certified by professional councils and must comply with fire safety and hazardous materials regulations. That's the last submission.
Can I ask to go back to a statement made? I have it on my page 18. There should be agreement between the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Local Government for referrals of abandoned elderly from hospitals to poor relief or infirmaries. Now, I can't recall us interrogating this matter sufficiently enough to advise ourselves that we should be making this part of our recommendation to the report, because I don't know the extent of the issue itself. And if there's a call for an agreement between both parties in the pursuance of this, I'm of the view that both parties should really go discuss it and identify any such agreement. It's difficult for us as a committee to be making this recommendation. I'm not seized with enough information to do so.
I was just going back, Senator Gale, to the submission that the Ministry of Health and Wellness had delivered to us. And I won't delay us too much, because I agree with you that a proposal like this should be subject to ministries discussing with each other.
Yes.
I think they were explaining to us the difficulty they were having with having older persons in hospitals who really ought to be discharged to long-term care facilities. Right. But for one reason or the other could not be discharged because they were abandoned by their families and they had no homes to go to. So we can note it. We can note it as an aside in our report, but yes, it wouldn't form the basis of a proposal for the law.
We're now on to part 2 of the meeting.
Madam Chair.
Senator Morris.
It sounds like somebody wants us to solve their problem.
It really does, doesn't it? But you know what? There's nothing like the force of a parliamentary committee to highlight something that needs to be done and can easily be done. The challenge, I know, of course, is the limited availability of space in the infirmaries, as was disclosed to us in one of our previous hearings. So I suspect that might be part of the challenge. But what we can craft a careful statement to encourage those that have the responsibility to have a discussion and to set up some sort of understanding framework that allows them to collaborate.
Yes, yes.
Part 2 of the matrix.
We're now moving to part 2, colleagues. So that part 2 deals with the submissions from the CCRP, the Mona Aging and Wellness, etc. Am I correct?
That's right.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, I have 2 part 1s.
Caribbean Community of Retired Persons, CCRP. Protection from abuse and neglect. The Act should address violence against older people, stipulating the offenses against older adults and the penalties for such offenses. All persons must report suspected abuse of the elderly, similar to child abuse laws. The Act must establish a court or commission to investigate and prosecute abuse cases. Protect whistleblowers.
Can we just pause there? Because the Act must establish a court or commission to investigate and prosecute abuse cases. Well, courts and commissions like that don't investigate. If you are, I'm not sure I'm clear on what they meant here. I'm trying to recall. If you are a body that is seeking to prosecute a case of abuse, and I suspect maybe my members can help me. Was CCRP suggesting that this be part of what a conceived elder advocate would do? Trying to go back to their submission. This one. All right, we can go on, and I will take a look at it. But I would not be supportive of the language of this. I'm just going to go back to their submission to remind myself what their specific proposal was. Ms. Hamilton, you can go ahead until I.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
just trying to get some clarity. We're on to Matrix 2 now, right?
Yes, part 2, and we're at CCRP's column, and we are now at the section for protection from abuse and neglect. On my document, it's on page 2.
Thank you.
And so the proposal was the Act must establish a court or commission to investigate and prosecute abuse. So if I could just refer my colleagues to page 5 of CCRP's submission on dated January 23rd, 2025. I'll read for you if you don't have it handy. They were proposing the establishment of a court or commission. And they said the Act must provide a court to which complaints of abuse can be made and which will have the capacity to investigate and punish instances of abuse. This will be an oversight body empowered by statute to hold to account any organization working with the elderly, have powers to take all due steps to investigate reports of abuse, have the power for the purpose of taking evidence on oath and of enforcing the attendance of witnesses, and for compelling the discovery and protection of documents and material objects. Protect whistleblowers, power to remove an individual at risk, power to ban a suspected abuser from contact with the abusee or from being present at a particular location, power to access financial records, establish criminal charges of elder abuse, neglect, ensure the implementation of the Act. Okay, so let me just say, I know CCRP is very well intentioned, and Mrs. Laurichin was very clear when she said, we're not lawyers. And so the proposals being made here and which are captured in the matrix are proposals which I think have resonance with us, but would not be proposals that we could say should be captured by the establishment of a court or commission. So I think they have, they fall under different aspects, and I'm just flagging this for my committee members. So as this is now in the CCRP section, I would be in disagreement with this, but we can flesh it out when we come to how the establishment of the advocate versus a commission versus the tribunal works in terms of what we're proposing be the duties and powers under each. Thank you. Ms. Hamilton.
Thank you. It's on. Thanks. Remove individuals at risk. Ban suspected abusers from contacting victims. Reports of financial abuse must be allowed anonymously with identity protection. Penalties must be imposed on those who fail to act on reports of elderly abuse. Legal rights and framework. Elderly persons have rights specific to them, similar to rights of a child. The Act should provide legal protection for seniors against abuse. Define key terms including senior citizens, types of abuse, relative. We're now to healthcare and mental wellness. Primary healthcare clinics must be elderly friendly. They must have ramps, seating, water, dementia support. Mandate age-friendly infrastructure at hospitals and clinics. Social protection and income security. Life certificate systems for pensioners must be simplified. Bank fees for elderly customers should be removed. Develop a program for retirees to work in consultancies, training programs, membership roles. Housing infrastructure and accessibility. Establish care standards for old age homes with government inspectors. That's the last comment for CCRP. Now to Mona Aging and Wellness Center under the theme Identified Gaps and Legislative Context. Introduce a Bill of Rights for older persons. Recognize aging as a lifelong multidimensional process. Raise public awareness to reduce ageism and caregiver burden. Collaborate with community-based organizations, private sector, and academia for implementation. Use international best practices, for example, those from Chile, Uruguay, Europe, and NYC campaigns to inform local strategies. Protection from abuse and neglect. Establish a comprehensive Elder Abuse Act modeled on the Child Care and Protection Act. Include clear legal definitions of elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Implement mandatory reporting mechanisms and protection orders. Create safe houses and emergency relocation mechanisms for victims of elder abuse. Introduce criminal penalties for abuse and legal protections for whistleblowers and caregivers. Enhance existing legislation, for example, the Banking Act, Offenses Against the Person Act, to explicitly protect persons aged 60 and older. Legal rights and framework. Enact an Older Persons Act similar in structure to the Disabilities Act to enshrine dignity, autonomy, and access to health care, social services, and protection from ageism and discrimination. Codify the rights of older persons in a single legislative instrument to ensure clarity, visibility, and legal recognition of these rights. Include legal provisions for living wills, durable power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, and legal guardianship. Align national legislation with international frameworks, including the Madrid International Plan of Action, UN Principles on Older Persons, and the Inter-American Convention on the Rights of Older Persons. Healthcare and mental wellness. Ensure periodic medication reviews to reduce pill burden and prevent polypharmacy. Promote holistic care encompassing physical, mental, social, and spiritual health. Advocate for regular wellness screenings, for example, hearing, vision, fitness checks. Increase access to counseling, medical support, and health information. Include pharmacy, students, and regulatory bodies in medication monitoring. Link health visitors to doctor's office for routine outreach. Social protection and income security. Improve pension systems and ensure financial inclusion of older persons. Encourage income-generating opportunities and flexible employment for capable older adults. Incentivize businesses to hire older adults, part-time or on contract roles. Legislates mechanisms to protect seniors' financial assets from exploitation. Housing infrastructure and accessibility. Require mobility-friendly home designs, such as grab bars, ramps, emergency response systems. Revisit housing schemes and public infrastructure to ensure age-friendly standards. Rehabilitate or repurpose underused community buildings for senior engagement. Family and community integration. Institutionalize incentives such as adopt a grant and mentorship programs. Promote intergenerational spaces and storytelling to preserve cultural identity. Expand use of churches, schools, and libraries as community hubs. Establish elder-friendly public transport or dial-a-ride services.
Again, colleagues, these are policy initiatives and not legislative proposals. So in terms of reporting, we note these things, but these are not part of the report on the legislative proposals.
Institutional capacity and governance. Establish an older persons tribunal or commission with quasi-judicial authority. Include an older persons advocate and representatives from social work, health, and NCSC. Monitor implementation of legislation and policy. Improve coordination among agencies responsible for elder care. Data and digital systems. Collect disaggregated data to monitor elder abuse and care access. Promote digital inclusion through gradual transitions and senior-specific training. Address digital exclusion in banking and government service access. Long-term care. Enact a Long-Term Care Act to provide a legal framework for the delivery of health and social services to persons at risk with loss of physical and/or mental capacity. Ensure that long-term care is accessible, affordable, and covers a continuum of needs, home-based, community, and institutional care.
Just an aside, sorry, to go back to data and digital systems again, another presenter speaking to the collection of data and disaggregated data on older persons, in this case, monitoring elder abuse, health, and care access. So again, I'm highlighting the need to include as a duty, the duty to collect and to publish the data, or duty to ensure the collection, something in that kind of language. But also flagging the digital exclusion in banking and government service access, I think would be covered under the rights section, under a section elucidating the rights of older persons. And so, although it would seem like a non-legislative commendation here, I think it would be captured under right of access of older persons, in the rights language. Include
informal family and residential care within the scope of legislation, establish financing mechanism and governance strategies for long-term care, including subsidies and insurance models, set workforce standards for caregivers, training, certification, wages, and legal protections, integrate support for informal caregivers. This would be mental, financial, and informational support with legal recognition. Promote prevention strategies to maintain functionality and delay institutionalization. Address rural and urban disparities in service delivery. Support job creation in caregiving and health sectors through regulated service delivery. That's the last comment. Matilda's Corner, District Consultative Committee. Protection from abuse and neglect. The Commission of Strata Corporation, CSC, must adopt a more sensitive and responsive approach to cases involving abuse of elderly residents. Lawyers must be held accountable for taking retainers from elderly clients without providing the promised legal services. Strata residents and neighbors should be prohibited from plotting to deprive elderly persons of their property or engaging in intimidation tactics such as blocking exits, throwing stones, or using threats to force elderly individuals from their homes. Legal rights and framework. The CSC should be required to respond to elderly residents' complaints in a timely and transparent manner. There should be legislative or regulatory reform to ensure the CSC cannot abandon dispute resolution proceedings due to the non-submission of financial statements by strata treasurers. Legal reforms should consider the rights of elderly individuals in strata housing, including protections for those who registered properties in good faith and are now disadvantaged due to retirement or financial constraints. Social protection and income security. Greater support should be provided for elderly persons who retire without a pension, especially those who have contributed to proper upkeep or community infrastructure and now require financial or social assistance. Housing infrastructure and accessibility. Protections should be established to prevent elderly residents in strata developments from being displaced or harassed, especially when they have maintained the property for decades and are now vulnerable. There must be safeguards for elderly persons who purchased property thinking it was a private residence but now face pressure or manipulation within shared or strata housing environments. Institutional capacity and governance. The CSC must be held accountable for following through with dispute resolution processes and maintaining financial transparency. Administrative systems with the CSC are related institutions must be strengthened to ensure that elderly individuals are not left without recourse when their rights are violated. Public health bodies such as the General Legal Council should be more accessible to elderly citizens seeking redress for professional misconduct. Now on to the good company. Identified gaps and legislative context. They emphasize the urgent need for comprehensive legislation to protect and support Jamaica's senior citizens. There is an importance for enabling seniors to age with dignity, respect, and security. Those aged 60 to 75 often rejected terms like elderly and did not identify with being called seniors, unlike those over 75. As a result, the organization prefers to use the term older adults. Protection from abuse and neglect. They're advocating for safe houses with clear access criteria and recommended additional support services such as counseling, legal aid, and medical care. They're proposing incentivizing seniors with large homes to provide temporary shelter for victims of elder abuse. They acknowledged the need for strong penalties and mandatory reporting. Legal rights and framework. They acknowledged the importance of legally empowering regulatory bodies such as the Pharmacy Council of Jamaica to actively intervene when issues such as overprescription or conflicts are identified. They proposed that Jamaica could start by implementing mandatory prescription checks at health centers, especially when prescriptions are refilled repeatedly. Healthcare and mental wellness. They highlighted the issue of medication mismanagement among seniors, emphasizing the dangers of polypharmacy, taking 5 or more medications simultaneously. They're calling for periodic medication reviews by a regulatory body to ensure the safety and necessity of the medications prescribed. They are suggesting involving final year pharmacy students to assist in flagging potential prescription issues. They acknowledge the need for strong penalties and mandatory reporting. Social protection and income security, they're advocating for more income generating opportunities for capable older adults. They noted that flexible part-time or contract work was rare for seniors and recommended incentives for companies to hire older persons. They praised programs such as Heart Trust's digital literacy training and encouraged valuing seniors' expertise in national development. Family and community integration, they emphasized bridging generational gaps through mentorship opportunities between seniors and youth, suggesting that schools and ministries should become involved in fostering cultural exchange and traditional knowledge sharing. Thank you. Institutional capacity and governance emphasized the importance of collaboration among the state, private sector, NGOs, and non-profit organizations in implementing these ideas. They supported the introduction of similar community-driven initiatives in Jamaica to reduce dependence on the state for funding social engagement programs. All right, now to Jamaica Psychiatric Association. Under identified gaps and legislative context, sociocultural beliefs such as the misconception that depression is a natural part of aging or that dementia is inevitable contribute to underdiagnosis and undertreatment. Multidisciplinary care should be culturally sensitive, person-centered, compassionate, and evidence-based. Protection from abuse and neglect. Legislation should be crafted to have specific penalties for elderly abuse infringements to empower older adults. Compulsory reporting of suspected elderly abuse should be included to ensure caregivers, healthcare workers, and proximate citizens are aware of their responsibility to bring these infringements to the attention of authorities. Legal rights and framework. Presently, there exists no specific legislation that dictates how individuals can legally direct their end-of-life wishes. What exists presently is an informal system that is not legally binding and one that relies on the interpretation of family members or healthcare providers to follow through with it. This creates a difficult situation for healthcare providers, family members, and doesn't optimally protect the dignity of older adults. Healthcare and mental wellness. Depression in the elderly is a significant public health issue associated with reduced quality of life and increased mortality. Greater accessibility to cognitive testing for older adults should be pursued. Cognitive impairment does not automatically mean a person lacks decision-making capacity, which should be clarified in the proposed legislation. Proper training for those administering cognitive tests is crucial. A multidisciplinary approach to elderly care is recommended, recognizing the unique needs of older adults. Social protection and income security. Provisions should be made for financial incentives, such as a small stipend for citizens who offer to assist older adults or who do not have family members readily available to help them. Financial assistance in the form of tax incentives could be applied to adults who demonstrate a history or genuine desire to take care of their older relatives but have demonstrable financial constraints. Institutional capacity and governance. Specialized teams for the geriatric community, similar to those for children and adolescents in the community mental health services, should be created. Regulation of nursing homes and health facilities. Setting minimum staffing standards for nursing homes and other caregiving settings should be considered. This could be modeled on the Mental Health Act, which outlines acceptable staffing levels for community mental health workers. We're going to the submission by Ms. McGregor. Legal rights and framework. We need some kind of statute that tells you what a power of attorney should look like and what will be acceptable in law. We need to put in place proper solutions to deal with those times when a power of attorney alone will not suffice, and you have to assess whether the person is mentally competent to give power. What we need to do is to empower those persons who are still mentally competent so that they put solutions in place. That person's power continues to be effective even if the donor becomes mentally incapacitated. We should have legislation that supports enduring or lasting powers of attorney, which continue after mental incapacity, similar to those in the UK. The Mental Health Act, as it's currently structured, does not allow persons who reside overseas to apply to be guardians. She thinks that it's worthwhile considering amending it because in most instances, the persons who provides finances and makes the financial decisions is actually the one who lives overseas. There's a need to broaden the category of persons who might be able to step in to care for the needs of mental patients. This is so because the Act specifically says if the nearest relative resides overseas, they are ascertained as if dead. For health care and mental wellness, there's a big question such as, what is lucid interval? Those questions have dodged the courts for generations, such as the Mental Health Act. it significantly needs to be reviewed to address these issues. There are objective tests that we use, but the level of monitoring has to be almost preemptive, as it has to be based on family history. Institutional capacity and governance. The Office of the Public Guardian in the UK can investigate allegations of abuse by a done or failure to act in the best interest of a vulnerable person. We have to rely on the Mental Health Act as tedious, time-consuming process, and certainly a costly one that many persons simply cannot afford. Reform.
Chair?
Go ahead.
Yes. My one concern there was where it mentioned in terms of the screening. I don't remember if the term preemptive was used based on family history. And I'm not sure. I just wanted to kind of stick a pin right there. I don't think that was the exact proposal or submission that was made regarding preemptive based on family history. So I wanna just caution that.
No, I think it's two separate thoughts, Senator Longmore. If you look at how it was set out, the level of monitoring has to be almost preemptive, semicolon, has to be based on family history. So it's 2 points that were being made.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Reform of power of attorney. Although powers of attorney are useful and reliable, they do not provide proper solutions for mentally incapacitated persons, particularly for donors who validly excluded powers of attorney but have supervening mental incapacity. There are reasonable and practical solutions within reach which we have failed to utilize to ensure that valid powers of attorney can outlast the supervening mental incapacity of a donor. A new and expanded power called a lasting power of attorney was introduced in the UK, governed by the Mental Capacity Act. That's the end of part 2.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Hamilton, I'm happy to give you a break and ask Ms. Patterson if she would take us through part 3. And thank you so very much. Just flagging a couple points to my committee members. So I have in my notes put down that as a consequence of some of the submissions we reviewed just now, that the presenters were really asking us to recommend also establishment of a law governing powers of attorney, establishment of legislation on long-term care, which is slightly more nuanced, well, not slightly more, which is more nuanced than an Elder Care and Protection Act, or whether or not the provisions that would fall under long-term care members would wish to capture under an Elder Care and Protection, I'm using that loosely, law they can opine on. I also noted recommendations for amendments to the Pharmacy Act and recommendations for amendments to the Mental Health Act and the Banking Act. Thank you, Senator Gale. Are there any others that members may have noted that I didn't capture? Oh, I'm sorry, the NHT Act. Okay. All right. Committee members, welcome Ms. Patterson, who is going to take over the Part 3 reading for us. Thank you, Ms. Patterson.
Good day, everyone. Sandra Latibody here. Older adults are not simply recipients of care, but are integral participants at the individual, community, and societal levels. The legislation must guarantee the rights, dignity, and well-being of older adults and ensure their participation in decision-making in matters affecting them. Gender differences in aging should be acknowledged. Older women live longer, often face greater financial hardship, and more often live with family than men, who more frequently require residential care. The Act should address violence against older people, stipulating the offenses.
That's the protection from abuse and neglect section. Thank you.
Yes. The Act should address violence against older people, stipulating the offenses against older adults and the penalties for such offenses. It should include mandatory requirements for healthcare professionals and social workers to report such matters to the police and the National Council for Senior Citizens, NCSC. The offenses should include neglect, abuse, which is physical, emotional, and financial, and violence by caregivers, institutions, and family members. The Act should include regular home visits by social worker and community health aides to identify elder abuse. Legal rights and framework. Define older adults as persons 60 years and over. Include legally defined capacity of the older adult and provisions such as living wills and advance age directives, written and oral, to ensure their wishes are honored in case of diminished cognitive function. Broaden the scope of the Nursing Homes Registration Act, NHRA, or establish a Nursing Home Care Standards Act to set care standards, qualifications, and oversight. Healthcare and mental wellness. Establish a national dementia plan. Prioritize healthy aging by incorporating chronic care management underpinned by a person-centered approach to care. The Act should mandate accessible, affordable, and age-friendly healthcare using a multidisciplinary team approach, including social workers, gerontologists, psychotherapists, etc. Social protection and income security. Address income insecurities for unpaid caregivers excluded from the formal workforce through respite care and non-contributory social insurance. For informal caregivers in the workforce, introduce benefits such as paid time off for care or job protection. Apply labor laws to ensure minimum wage and protection for professional caregivers. Include social insurance contributions to care work for both formal and informal caregivers. Housing infrastructure and accessibility. The Act should mandate standards of care in institutional settings and monitoring of structures in neighborhoods. Provide incentives to landlords to offer affordable rentals to older adults. Include provisions for designated housing for older adults, such as independent living, institutional care, emergency and respite housing. Ensure that older adults live in safe, accessible homes that support their physical, mental, and emotional well-being. family and community integration. Support aging in place by highlighting the roles of NCSC social workers and MOHW community health aides. Mandate the creation and maintenance of a registry of older adults in each parish to access and respond to their needs. Institutional capacity and governance. Assign the monitoring of care for older adults to government agencies such as the Ministry of Health and Wellness and NCSC. Mandate training and certification of care workers to ensure quality care. Involve government agencies in the establishment and oversight of caregiver policies. Monitoring and support systems. Data and digital systems. Maintain a register of older adults in each parish to access their needs, medical and non-medical, and the kinds of support required. Regulations of nursing homes and health facilities. Broaden the NHRA to include standards of care, qualifications of personnel, and quality oversights. Alternatively, establish a Nursing Home Care Standards Act to work in tandem with the NHRA. Patricia Duncan Sutherland. Identified gaps and legislative context. Promote the empowerment, independence, happiness, and respect of elderly persons. Ensure programs facilitate not just protection, but also transform and continuity of purpose in the lives of older adults. Recognize that current legislation like the Human Service Act 2018 and Nursing Home Registration Act 1934 are outdated and need expansion. Protection from abuse and neglect. Include the right to be free from abuse, neglect, and exploitation in the rights framework. Create safe houses for elderly victims of abuse. Appoint an elderly advocate to support vulnerable workers to report to vulnerable individuals acting as a power of attorney where there is no family or where abuse is suspected, financial, mental, physical. Legal rights and framework. Use the UN Model Law framework with 2 sections, rights and duty of care. Include rights such as dignity, freedom from abuse, discrimination, adequate health care, participation, and material assistance. Examine the expansion of family courts rule and powers to enforce the duty of care. Absorb the Maintenance Act into the Elderly Care Act to streamline family obligations. Define family as 3 or 4 generations, including great-grandparents where applicable. Create an elderly council or commission to review implementation and future relevance of the Act. Establish the role of an elderly advocate to provide legal guidance and assistance, especially for vulnerable persons. Health care and mental wellness. Ensure accessible and adequate health care, including mobile units. Promote a family-centered approach to social work to support caregivers and improve mental health through social inclusion. Include medical care within the duty of the state and regulate standards. Social protection and income security. Introduce material assistance from the state as a part of elderly rights. promote economic empowerment through entrepreneurship support for older adults, example, tax-free registration of new businesses for 3 years, facilitate reverse mortgage frameworks, NHT, for elderly financial independence, expand social protection programs to connect families with opportunities for mobile and financial support, housing infrastructure and accessibility, guarantee the right to adequate housing, develop safe, accessible walking areas, including paved sidewalks with benches and sidewalks, gym equipments, expand the definition of care in residential settings in legislations to include both client protection and worker protection. Family and community integration. Support family-centered social work and caregiving. Establish community spaces and interactional areas where elderly can engage with children, example, daycare for the elderly. Create vocational training and entrepreneurial support programs for older adults to promote independence and community involvement. Use community centers as bases for connecting families and services and promoting home visits. Institutional capacity and governance. Establish the Elderly Council/Commission to oversee and update laws implementation. Empower the Ministry of Social Security as the governing ministry. Support development and regulation of the care economy, including long-term, short-term, and home-based care. Ensure decent work for caregivers, aligning with ILO resolution and decent work and the care community 2024. Regulation of nursing homes and health facilities. Modernize and regulate the care economy. Expand and update the Nursing Home Registration Act to cover standards of care, protection of clients, and protection of workers. Jennifer Anderson identified gaps and legislative context. Create holistic elder care programs addressing physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social well-being. Protection from abuse and neglect. Stricter penalties for persons who exploit or abuse seniors. Legal rights and framework. Develop legislations to protect seniors' dignity, autonomy, and legal rights. Healthcare and mental wellness. Establish health visitor system linked to local doctor offices for quarterly home visits to seniors. Subsidize fitness programs such as yoga, aerobics, dance, and promote wellness education, including free eye and hearing tests every 2 years. Social protection and income security. Offer financial support for seniors, including subsidized health care and nutritious food access. Provide income-generating opportunities for active seniors and incentivize employment of older persons in flexible or part-time roles. Housing infrastructure and accessibility. Develop assisted living facilities with emergency response systems and elderly-friendly architecture. Establish a dial-a-ride or subsidized transport system using school buses during off-peak times. Family and community integration. Create intergenerational initiatives like Adopt a Grammy to connect isolated seniors with youths or families. Establish senior hubs in communities with cultural events, crafts, games, and learning opportunities. Use churches as community hubs for social and health-based outreach during weekdays. Train and employ social workers and aides to conduct outreach and assessments in collaboration with churches. Institutional capacity and governance. Ensure rigorous vetting and background checks for caregivers and create national standards for caregiver training.
And that last one was consistent with the requirements for licensing, registration, etc. I think that was it for Ms. Anderson.
Yes. Sandra Small. Protection from abuse and neglect. Psychometric test for those working and geriatrics-only persons with gentle personalities and caring hearts should be working with the elderly. Otherwise, we can expect they will be abused.
Just aside, colleagues, please remember that we did not see, did we lose our online colleagues? So, are they hearing us?
No, Madam Chair, I'm here.
Okay, you are. Okay, very well.
Likewise.
Okay, thank you. I was just making note that this submission from Ms. Sandra Small was a submission sent in writing only.
Okay. Unannounced audits and inspections of private and public homes for aged. We must ensure those who are auditing these homes are unrelated to the operators and are trained professionals of unquestionable character. Social protection and income security. Subsidized meals for the elderly who are indigent and who are childless. Family and community integration. Establish social and meeting spots for the elderly. We still have value, life, feelings, and still social beings. Jamaica needs social spaces similar to China's square dancing for the elderly. Regulation of nursing homes and health facilities. Unannounced audits and inspections of private and public homes for the aged. Elderly persons are sometimes only given hearty meals on the days relatives are visiting. Yvette Lewis.
Again, another submission that was sent in writing but did not appear before the committee.
Protection from abuse and neglect. Launch a national campaign sensitizing the population to show empathy and care to the elderly. No one grows younger, but the older one gets, the less one is seen.
Again, another call to the duty of public education by the proposed commission.
Social protection and income security. Appeal to the private sector to adopt or sponsor even a small number of elderly persons in and around their establishment twice per month. Some special regulation of hotel surplus food can be made to ensure safe food reaches these elderly citizens. Housing infrastructure and accessibility. A public system that includes special buses for the elderly would be a good move. The elderly need to visit doctors and supermarkets too. Taxis in Kingston are not for the old people. I am guessing it is the same thing across the country. Family and community integration. Provide places where older folks can meet and socialize. They should be able to purchase balanced meals and at reasonable cost at these places. Each center should have areas for exercise with coaches guiding them. Institutional capacity and governance. Appoint elderly care wardens to make fortnightly checkups on the childless elderly across the nation. These wardens should be carefully selected after being interviewed by the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the Ministry of National Security. They should be trained in basic first aid and report writing and submit pictures as proof of their visits. Data and digital systems. For their financial protection, collaborate with banks to make and keep banking simple for the elderly. They should never be forced to do online banking. Similarly, collaborate with telecommunication providers so that the elderly are not forced to use smartphones. Regulation of nursing homes and health facilities. Ensure all the homes for the aged are providing the care they should and are not merely collecting people's money. Alyssa Freeman identified gaps and legislative context. Seek to guarantee the rights, dignity, and well-being of older adults, ensuring their active participation in decision-making and matters affecting them. Acknowledge that older adults are not simply recipients of care, but are integral participants at the individual, community, and societal levels, and that biologically aging is inevitable. Protection from abuse and neglect. The Act should address violence against older people, stipulating the offenses against older adults and penalties such as such offenses. The Act should address mandatory requirements for the healthcare professionals and social workers to report the matter to the police and the NCSC. The offenses addressed in the Act should include neglect, abuse, whether physical, emotional, and financial, and violence by the caregiver's institution and family members. Legal rights and framework. An older adult is defined as a person who is 60 years and over. Based on UN 2024, the Jamaica National Policy for Senior Citizens 2021. Legally defined capacity of the older adult and the provisions such as living wills and advanced age directives, written and oral, to ensure their wishes are honored in cases of diminished cognitive function. Healthcare and mental wellness. Establish a national dementia plan. Prioritize health aging, incorporating chronic care management with a person-centered approach. Mandate accessible, affordable, and age-friendly healthcare. Employ a multidisciplinary team approach, including social workers, gerontologists, and psychotherapists. Social protection and income security. Address home insecurities for unpaid caregivers excluded from the formal workforce. Consider respite care and non-contributory social insurance for unpaid caregivers. For informal caregivers in the workforce, provide benefits like paid time off for care or for job protection. Apply labor laws regarding minimum wage and protection of professional care workers, housing infrastructure and accessibility. Many older adults live in substandard housing and poor neighborhood conditions. Mandate standards of care in institutional settings and monitor neighborhood structures across the country. Provide incentives to landlords to offer affordable rentals. Designate non-care or institutionalized housing specifically for older adults. Ensure older adults live in homes that support their physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Include permanent, emergency, and respite housing options. Family and community integration. Aging in place that is home-based and care and gender. Many older adults prefer to live in their own homes, relying on families, neighbors, and the church community for support. Aging affects men and women differently. Older women live 4 to 5 years longer than men and are more likely to live at home with family, while older males are more likely to need residential care. The Act should address aging in place by highlighting the role of the social workers at the National Council for Senior Citizens and the community health aides in the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Their roles should include, but are limited to, mandating regular home visits, maintaining and monitoring systems to identify elder abuse, and maintaining a register of older adults in each parish to access their needs. Institutional capacity and governance. The Ministry of Health and Wellness and the National Council for Senior Citizens should monitor the care of older adults. The Act must explicitly address unpaid, informal, and paid formal care workers. The Act should address mandatory training and certification of care workers in relation to the paid care work to ensure quality care. Regulation of nursing homes and health facilities. The Act provides an opportunity to broaden the scope of the NHRA to include standards of care, quality of care, and qualifications of facility personnel. Establish a nursing home care standards act to work in tandem with the NHRA. And the final submission of Shane Wright. Legal rights and framework. Parliament should enact a law that speaks to how society govern. Agencies should treat and care for the elderly. Housing infrastructure and accessibility. All operators of public transportation vehicles should be required by law to give preference to the elderly when boarding passengers. On all JUTC buses, the elderly should always be seated first if a line is formed to board a bus. The elderly should not have to join the line. It is unsightly to see the elderly waiting in a long line. was the last one.
Thank you very much, Ms. Patterson. Okay, colleagues. So we have looked through the three-part matrix, and I am going to, with your leave, do some collating. I would be grateful if the technical team, the Ledge Council in particular, could buttress me. And so if we take it issue by issue, I think the majority of the recommendations in relation to the meaty legislative ones, the committee agreed with most of the presenters and are agreed in a unified way, but let me just go through. So if we look at the issue of protection from abuse and neglect, the issue here, or the proposal here, was that the law address issues of elder abuse, and in the first instance, that term be defined, and defined also to include financial exploitation of older persons. Yes, I see my Ledge Council nodding. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And pleasant afternoon, members. By extension, it would also cover the rights of older persons.
Yes, was that not set out in a separate issue in the matrix, though? Yes, legal rights and framework, so we'll come into that. So it is the definition of the term, the institution of the offense of abuse to include financial exploitation, and also increases in the penalties for offenses of abuse, or rather, increase in the penalties for offenses when the victims are older persons. Have I captured the sum total of the proposals under that section? Of? Oh, I'm so sorry, yes. So let me go on to I was speaking specifically about the elder abuse issue. Let me go on now. So then under that section also is a requirement for the licensing registration of care homes, residential care homes. Pardon? The creation of duties of the state to inspect those homes and monitoring of those homes. I think that already exists in the Nursing Homes Registration Act, but we wanted it a little bit more strengthened, I think is what the proposals were saying. Go ahead.
They have mandatory reporting
of what? Who does?
No, they're summarizing
Right. So I don't reach there yet. I'm dealing with nursing homes and registration. I'm going section by section, meaning I'm going issue by issue according to the matrix, right? So I'm just tying up those things that the committee members should be agreeing, and I'm not hearing anybody objecting. Mandatory. Under the same protection from abuse and neglect, there were proposals from the Mona Aging and Wellness for mandatory reporting of abuse issues with older persons. And I recall in the discussion with the committee, I believe it was Senator Longmore who put forward a duty of certain professionals to report. So be that medical doctor. And is there not currently a duty? Because they certainly have a duty to report cases of child abuse, but there's no
current duty to report cases of older persons' abuse, right? So Senator Longmore, I recall, had asked us to look at the proposal for a duty to report by medical professionals, and I suppose in the fleshing out, when this moves past us, there can be a decision as to whether or not that duty to report extends to any other named persons in the Act. So that can be worded in a way to indicate that the committee would want that looked at. I did already say increase in penalties for abuse in relation to older persons. Am I leaving out anything? So we went through licensing, registration of nursing homes, licensing of caregivers, setting the law to set standards of care and standards of conduct of caregivers. I think that is where I would leave it for this section of protection from abuse and neglect. Senator Gale.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
It's okay.
All right.
Madam Chair?
Yes? Yes. Hi, Dr. McCoy. Go ahead.
Right. So good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to follow up in terms of the protection. I noted a number of entities requested safe spaces as a part of the legislation, as well as a whistleblowing mechanisms whenever there is
whenever there are reports
there
to
are
be
reports
made.
made.
Okay.
Right.
And currently, I don't think the Protective Disclosures Act would necessarily cover a report like this unless it came from an entity as opposed to an individual. I stand to be guided on that. I don't know if Ms. Roden, can you opine on that? If a person were to report abuse of an older person, currently the whistleblower law doesn't. Well, it doesn't protect them because it's not a job situation. It's no. The retaliation that they would be looking at would be retaliation from family, friends, maybe. So there's no protection there, I don't think. You think not going on? Okay.
Based on my recollection of the Protective Disclosure Act, I believe it has to be from an entity and not necessarily an individual.
Right. Okay. So the proposal was that provisions be included to ensure that those who report cases of abuse or neglect of older persons were not subject to retaliation by other persons. For those details to be fleshed out. But I understand the intent, which is to ensure that there's a protective environment for reports to be made. All right, I think I've covered that section. Any omissions that I have made, colleagues? Okay. All right, so I'm going to go now to the question of the legal rights and framework. Why does this feel like it's so far from me? Okay. Legal rights and framework. And in that section, the big and most major proposal is that the law enshrine the rights of older persons. And those rights have been agreed and adopted excuse me, in our national policy. And so that language to be captured in our proposed law.
Senator Gale?
I believe one or two submissions indicated to define the age as to what constitutes an older person. I believe some would have said 60 or thereabout. We may want to consider this piece of legislation defining such, because when you now speak about the rights, there has to be a threshold in terms of age.
Yes, and you're quite correct that that was a repeated recommendation.
And Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Senator Morris.
Professor Eldemeyer Shearer did point to various international treaties that refers age 60 as the age for an older person. So I think we should make sure that in this definition, it reflects that age.
Yes, very well. Okay. In relation to legal rights and framework, were there any other points that we wanted to capture? So it's the age, the setting out of the rights of older persons. I do believe that was the extent of the submissions in that area. Oops. Yes, go ahead.
So, in summary, for the legal rights and framework, we have generally a request for a definition of key terms, a request for a similar structure to the Child Care and Protection Act and the Disabilities Act, an alignment with international policy.
What does that mean?
Meaning many of the safeguards that are provided for in those legislations or laws are to be mimicked.
You mean in relation to rights?
In relation to structure.
Structure
So,
of
for
what?
example, both legislation provide for, well, the Child Care and Protection Act provides for an advocate. They provide for a tribunal, they provide for a commission, they provide for a council. So I believe the submission is seeking to mimic that institutional framework to be imposed in any legislation for the care and protection of older persons.
Okay, so I was going to treat with that under the institutional capacity and governance issue, but we can discuss it here now. So the structure meaning the advocate, the commission, that kind of thing?
Yes.
Is that, are my committee members of one accord in relation to that structure?
Repeat that, Chair.
Are we of one accord in relation to the structure that we're proposing to govern and monitor the older persons and their needs, their care, their protection? So the structure proposed was that there is a commission, and there is an existing commission that engages older persons, that seeks to do public education, that holds a registry of older persons, and other similar matters. We have discussed in the committee two additional features, which is one, an older person's advocate, somebody who is legally empowered to represent older persons, to inquire into cases involving older persons, inquire into the monitoring duties of the state in relation to older persons, and to intervene on behalf of older persons in various types of legal or even administrative matters. That would be the advocate. In the current situation, the children's advocate is, I believe, a commission of parliament. Yes?
Yes.
Created by statute, but is a commissioner of parliament. The other feature is the feature of a tribunal, a quasi-judicial body that would hear matters in relation to older persons. Now, here is where I think we need to tread carefully, because certainly matters in relation to criminal matters, cases of physical abuse, violence, those kinds of things, properly reside in the court. And I don't know that we would certainly not be within our remit, based on our laws, to move them to some quasi-judicial body that is appointed and that kind of thing. So those matters, criminal matters, would go where they go. The kinds of matters that I think this tribunal would be looking at would be matters, for example, I think it was Miss Yvette Lewis? No. Yes, I think it was Miss Yvette Lewis who had mentioned, no, I'm mixing her up. It is the Matilda's Corner District Consultative Committee, Mrs. Browers, who had given us an example of an older person being harassed and discriminated against in a strata housing situation, something like that. There are other examples I'm sure that other members can think about in terms of what that tribunal would do. There's a question now as to whether or not such a tribunal, and tribunal I don't think is really the right name, but whether or not such a tribunal should also be empowered in relation to things like the powers of attorney or guardianship. And again, I need to be guided, because guardianship is an awesome responsibility. And so can such a quasi-judicial body really be empowered to issue those kinds of orders? My inclination would be to say no, that still requires the monitoring of a court. So the question remains then, do we need a tribunal, or is it sufficient to have the commission dealing with administrative matters and the advocate who is legally empowered to take matters to a court and to intervene in matters to a court, and to make complaints on behalf of an older person when matters come to her attention? So,
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Morris.
If you look at what exists with the Disability Rights Tribunal now, you know, it takes into consideration the very things that you have said, because it doesn't consider or tries cases of violence and criminal abuse of persons with disabilities. But what it focuses on are issues of discrimination and violation of the rights of persons with disabilities. And, you know, that is a formula that we could mirror, you know, based on what we are doing here, you know, because we could look at that entity, that tribunal, just focusing on the violation of the rights of these individuals, whether it be, property rights and so forth. But also recall that the said Disabilities Act doesn't prevent a person with a disability from going straight to the court to carry those matters. If the person with disability wants to bypass that procedure and just use the regular court proceedings, they can. But it is a shorter way of dealing with the violation of those rights for persons with disabilities. So I think that you can look, Madam Chair, at the formulation in the Disabilities Act and
for guidance.
For guidance, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
The gray area is, there's a call for reporting to some kind of organization. And the first issue that we have to determine is what is it that you are going to be reporting, and the reach that organization or authority will have in dealing with those reports. So we have the concerns in relation to reporting neglect, reporting abuse, and it depends on what that abuse will be, because some abuse may be physical in nature, which has a different connotation that you could report to the police. So we have to really, Chair, drill down what are those issues that are going to be reported, who is going to treat with them, who is going to receive them, because they are varying in nature. And then when you speak about the rights of older persons, we have to define what those rights are and how you treat with those rights. Sometimes when you have this kind of forum, there's a kind of expectation that is submitted that a committee like this is expected to deliver. But we really have to distill what can be confined in law, what are the manageable expectations, and how we can treat with it. Absolutely. And so the first instance, I agree with Senator Morris in that we have to look at the disability tribunal and to see how we can either align or mimic or associate, whichever term you want to use, as some sort of a guide. Yeah. But we really have to be very careful in terms of what are we imposing in law that we really can't be able to treat with in terms of its execution.
Yes. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I just want to also find out, you see, because we mentioned a commission, and I don't have a problem with that, but is that commission going to be the equivalent or the new name for the Senior Citizens Council as is now?
I see Senator Gale shaking his head.
Is he shaking his head to say yea or nay?
I think he's shaking his head to say nay. I will just say this before he comes in, that I think what we have heard and what we are conceiving of is some independent commission, a body that can be held accountable in a different way than being a department, essentially, within a ministry. So its governance structure, reporting lines are going to be different. Right now, you have a commission that has an advisory board. Am I correct? Yes. An advisory board that essentially reports to the minister. My understanding of the recommendations made to us is that the presenters wanted to see a more autonomous and accountable structure. Senator Gale.
I don't share the view because the council itself now has a far wide-reaching responsibility, and that you don't want to be distracted on. We're looking at a body that ought not to be subsumed into the council either, because there has to be a firewall between any commission and this council. We may consider expanding the functions and the remit of the council, but this commission has to be separate and apart, isolated, has its own autonomy and responsibility.
There is a concern here because you would have to show me something of that nature in our existing jurisprudence, because what has been the approach is to establish an entity in law that is a statutory institution, and in establishing that entity as a statutory institution, you have a board that is recognized in law to drive policy for that institution. And that is where you have institutions like the NHT, for example. You have the now established Jamaica Council for Persons with Disability, and it has a board. It is now a statutory entity. And that is what I was thinking we were heading in terms of establishing the Senior Citizens Council as a statutory entity with a board to govern its operation. You would have to show me in law where you have a commission that is separate and apart from a department that is charged to deal with the particular issue, in our current framework.
Senator Morris, I don't know where we fell into disconnect, but it would have to be established in law. We're agreed on that. Are you there?
No. Yeah. So no, I don't understand what you say.
In other words, what is your understanding of what we suggested?
I understand that you will have the Senior Citizens Council kept as a department in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. And then you would establish a commission that is independent of the ministry or the minister, and create, and that would replace the current advisory board, which that is, I tell you, you're going to have a problem with that, with any cabinet, in terms of that sort of formulation.
No, I think there's a disconnect, because I don't think that's what we're saying.
That's what Cavan said just now.
Cavan, Senator Gale, you want to clarify? Go.
No, because Senator Morrison, I'm taking it that you are suggesting an expanded council and give the council this kind of autonomy when you establish a board. So it's no longer advisory to the minister or the Ministry of Labor. That's what you're suggesting.
It it would still fall under the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, you know, because every entity has is domiciled under a ministry and takes ministerial direction. It's just that this would give it a statutory, it would now become a creature of statute, that is the Senior Citizens Council under its board to govern its operation.
I hear you, but I would want to give it some more thought in terms of, you know,
and get some
how
guidance.
this can apply.
Get some guidance. Get some guidance.
And neither am I ruling out any research that can effectively point us in a direction in another jurisdiction as to how this works. I believe, if I can look back, there were certain submissions relating to certain jurisdictions. I recall one spoke about India, I believe, in the earlier stages. It may have come from legal reform. But we can look at that.
All right, I'm going to, it's now 1:24, colleagues, and I have to close for today. But I'm going to, as I thought, this is the part that is going to give us some trouble. So having said what we've said just now, I'm going to ask my colleagues to think about it, to look back at their papers, to look back at the legal recommendations we have been given, certainly in the foundational documents, legal reform, etc., and for us to revisit this matter tomorrow morning. The other thing I would ask is that perhaps what we will look at is to deal with the matters that are more simpler and easier to agree, and deal with those first, and deal with the challenging ones after. In the meantime, what we will do, because those matters are not unclear to us, the ones that were not difficult ones, for example, the offenses issue. So what I would ask is that the team consolidate what you have now as the report and let us prepare to deliver a draft document later this evening for the members so that they can go through that, and we can tweak it tomorrow when members have completed the deliberations on this. I thank you for those who have attended today and who will be with us tomorrow. And I have asked for those who will be present in person that the relevant persons make some accommodations so that members and the team can get some lunch, so we can lunch and get right back to work tomorrow. On a final note, I will also indicate, and I neglected to do this at the beginning of the meeting, that the Ministry of National Security had responded to information that we requested. The date of the response is June 17th, 2025, and a copy had been emailed to members, and a hard copy is present today. I would ask members just to take a look at that, and if they have any follow-up concerns, then we can raise that. You can raise that with us tomorrow. That said, and the hour being 1:27, and I do apologize, I have to stop hard, and I know everybody is hungry and wants to grab some lunch as well. Might I ask Senator Gill to move for an adjournment, and one of my members online to second? Thank you, Senator Gill.
So seconded.
Thank you, Senator Longmore.
And I third.
Thank you. And members, thank you so very much for your participation today. I look forward to active participation again tomorrow so that we can conclude this matter, given my imposed timeline on you. And I thank you for your cooperation.
So we'll get the draft
This evening,
Okay.
Senator Morris, the alleged counsel is nodding her head in agreement.
Thanks very much. Thanks
Very
very
well.
much. All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye-bye.
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 The meeting is adjourned, members.